Alrighty, howdy boys, welcome back to the second part of my FGO review, or review of the review, for Pseychie's FGO review. How many times can I say the word review in one sentence? But yeah, a couple things that I want to say here, in the aftermath of the 4-hour-long first part. Now that I think about it, a lot of the stuff that I talked about during the first third of this video, of Pseychie's video that is, have mainly been about gameplay stuff, so I'm thinking that the rest of this video shouldn't be as long, but then again, I might have a lot to say about, the rest of the stuff here too. And it's still important stuff that he has to go over: Gacha, monetization, presentation, blah blah blah. He spends a lot of time on presentation. I kind of wonder what he's gonna go on about here. He talks about it for like, how many minutes? Almost 20 minutes? 30 minutes even? So we'll see what he's got to say there. But, yeah, hopefully this part, the second part, won't be as long. However, I'm still expecting my entire autistic review of this video to still have to be like 3 parts long. So yeah, expect more, at least 3-hour review videos from me, I guess. Anyways, just something to keep in mind as we go into this one. So yeah, let's get into it.
Gacha and monetization. Here we go. FGO is infamously known for its brutal gacha system. Even long-term players will nod their heads and agree, saying, yeah, we know, it's hell. But just how bad is it? Well, aside from the friend point gacha, where 1 and 2 stars come from, FGO has had the almost iconic...
You can get 3 stars too, but they're the rarest thing. They're among the rarest things that you can get. Technically, you can get a 0-star servant. In-game, they're classified as, or they have the same stats as a 2-star, but officially they're known as, they're the only 0-star servant in the game. His name is, how do you pronounce it? Angra Mainyu. We call him Angry Mango, as a joke. He's a meme character. He's the rarest servant you can get in the game, technically speaking. I don't know the official pull chance off the top of my head, but I believe he's the rarest servant you can get in the entire game. He's even rarer than like limited time 5-star servants, which is kind of hilarious. And he doesn't really do much. He's just there as a meme, basically. Lore wise, it kind of makes sense, I guess, but whatever. But you can also get 3-star servants, aside from Angra Mainyu, or Angry Mango. They're the rarest things that you can get, but it is possible, which is why we can still consider 3-star servants to be free to play.
1% 5-star drop chance, and a 3% for 4 stars. You roll using the gacha...
Is it 3%? I thought it was always 4%. I'd have to check the gacha rates again. Pretty sure it's 4%, but whatever.
Currency Saint Quartz, and each pull costs 3 units, with a free pull for every 10th time you roll on it. See, at its launch, if you looked at the cash shop to buy quartz with real money, it actually gave you a lesser amount versus what we have now. Even as of current time, this quartz top-up shop is the only place you can spend money on the game. There's no daily deals or flash sales that may tempt you. This is also the only gacha game reviewed so far that does not have a 30-day welcome or battle pass system. Whether you think it's out of goodwill or out of incompetence for not knowing how to monetize their game, what lies is a fact that if you do spend money on the game, you have to do it here. In other words, you know exactly what you're doing. As for the SSR rate...
FGO has never had a battle pass or a monthly pass. Remember that FGO is an old school gacha, or I would consider it to be an old school gacha. And things like monthly passes and battle passes weren't exactly common back then. The 3 old school gachas that I play personally, well, at least used to for one of them, are FGO, Azure Lane, and the one that I used to play is Girls Frontline 1. At the start of each of those games, maybe with the exception of GFL 1, I forget if GFL 1 like always had like a monthly pass. You pay $5 and you get a few gems every time you log in, basically, or at every daily reset, more specifically. But Azure Lane did not have about a daily pass like that, like a monthly pass like that. Not at the start. It does now. It introduced that, I think, a couple of years into its life cycle. But FGO has never had one. And to this day, it still doesn't have one. Doesn't have a monthly, doesn't have a battle pass. Personally, I am of the opinion that it should have. FGO, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I think it should have. It should have one. Maybe that's going a little bit far. But but for those who are willing to pay for them, I do think it would be a nice addition to have. If you're talking about if you're coming at it from like a value perspective, right? Because obviously monthly passes are worth it just because, the whole idea is that you can get like a multis or even 2 multis worth, if you're lucky, worth of gems, depending on the gacha game you're talking about, for at a significantly reduced price. The cost is that, or besides the $5, the other cost is that you just gotta wait for a month, right? And I would go so far as to say that, most FGO players wouldn't mind something like that, just considering that, for God knows how long, for like going on a decade now, the only way, as Pseychie said just now, the only way you can spend money at all in this game is to buy the fucking Saint Quartz packs. That's it. So at this point, oh yeah, it really is a 3% rate. I thought it was always 4%. Maybe I knew it was 3%, but somehow over the years, I turned it to 4. Inside my head, I turned to 4%. Maybe I also got it confused with 5-star Craftuses, but hey, he's not lying. It's 3% right here. Anyways, got distracted there for a second. So yeah, I do think it would benefit FGO's players overall if they did decide to do like a monthly system or battle pass system, but I'm only one guy, and of course, it's always up to Los Angeles / Sony to make that kind of decision. I'm just surprised considering Sony, sucks out so much of FGO's profits that Sony didn't just convince Los Angeles to put in the usual, modern gaming microtransaction trend bullshit, like, monthly passes and battle passes, but I guess we're stuck with what we have, I guess.
Rate up, there is a 0.8% chance to drop, or 80% of the 1% overall chance. But this actually used to be only 0.7% in the past, and the free 11th poll didn't exist. For the rate up SR, there is a...
Yep, the 11 roll and the 0.8% rate up were, I don't want to say recent additions. We've had them for a while, but they came through like halfway through NA's current life cycle, I think. For the first at least 3, 4, 5 years. I forget exactly when they implemented it, or implemented those two. But we certainly didn't start with an 80% rate up or an 11 roll. At the start of the game, it was just your usual 10 roll for multis, and then 0.70 or 0.7 percent for limited 5-star rate ups, or 70% overall, boost chance. Something to keep in mind, though, the base chance to pull in SSR did not change. It's still 1% to this day, and I don't think they're ever gonna change that. So yeah, very rare to get a 5-star at all at those kinds of percentages.
1.5% or 50-50 coin flip of it being the rate up, but this has increased to 2.1% as of the 7th anniversary. After 330 pulls, if you still have not received the rate up SSR, you are guaranteed to pull it. If you're wondering why it's 330, that's due to the 11th free pull after 30 multis, or the equivalence of 900 SQ. What's more, the pity is disabled when you pull the first copy of the rate up, and it does not carry over to the next banners. I'm just gonna straight out.
Before Pseychie gives out his own opinions on that, just to update everyone, because I don't know if he'll update it later, or if he'll mention it later. In JP, I don't know if NA has it yet, but in JP, the pity is no longer disabled after you get it the first time. At least I want to say that's the case. I think I've heard about them changing it. They might have changed it with last New Year's, actually, or a month or so ago. So it should be a very recent development. So I can see why, since Pseychie's this video came out like 6 months ago, then yeah, obviously he wouldn't have known it back then. But yeah, just so you know, FGO's pity does now repeat. Or in other words, FGO's pity. So FGO's pity is a very hilarious story. It might not surprise you to know that FGO did not have pity when it started. I honestly believe that the only reason why FGO has a pity right now is because of Genshin Impact. Because of the rise of Genshin Impact, how it flung the gacha genre into mainstream gaming attention, and yeah, it set a lot of gacha industry standards for a lot of the new gachas moving forward that came out after it did, right? That's Genshin Impact is the reason why you see a lot of big gacha games, or not even just big, just a lot of gacha games in general that came out after 2020, basically 2020, 2021. Include stuff like they basically emulate Hoyo's gacha model, the whole expensive ass multis. Well, I mean FG also has expensive multis too if you think about it. A soft/hard pity, usually hard pity, soft pity depends on the game. And then alternating alternating guaranteed rate ups, that sort of thing. Character banners, weapon banners, a standard banner, all that good stuff. Well, standard banners have kind of always been a thing technically, but just something that they decided to keep over from old gacha games, I guess. But the point is that Genshin established a lot of gacha industry norms that you see throughout a lot of new gacha games that have come out in the past 2-3 years, and because of that, FGO, the devs, I want to say the devs didn't want to let FGO feel like it's falling behind too much, right? So one of the laziest ways that they could have gone about doing that is by implementing a pity, which obviously we would all argue. I don't think anybody would argue against the fact that, or argue against the notion that they should have always had one in the first place. But they added one, like 6 or 7 years into this fucking game's life cycle, and it was extremely lazily implemented, right? The how the pity used to work is how Pseychie just described it. You only get one instance of pity. It doesn't repeat. It only works on banners that are completely new. So, for example, if a banner came out, is that how this works? My understanding of the pity initially when it came out in JP was that if you were on one banner for a particular character and that character gets a rerun later, right? But you already used up that pity on that banner, when that rerun happened again, that pity's still disabled. So literally just one instance of pity and go fuck yourself. That's how my understanding of it. That's how I understood it worked. Yeah, it wasn't good. It's pretty shitty, right? Because the pity that FGO has, can we even call it a spark pity? Because usually, whenever you have a spark pity, the game allows you to choose exactly who you want to use up your spark for. Here it's not. It's more like it's literally like Hoyo's pity, where you can't really choose; it just happens. But instead of 7, 8, or 9 multis, if you're really unlucky in Hoyo games, it's literally 30 multis, right? 30 multis, take it or leave it. As shitty as that sounds, that was actually an improvement. It disgusts me to even say that it's an improvement, but technically speaking, I have to say that it is. The horror stories, where we just started on this gacha monetization part, so I'll go over this again later if Pseychie brings it up. But real quick, the horror stories that veteran FGO players such as myself and others have when it comes to how much we have to spend for certain 5-star servants. Whatever you've heard out of people who have rolled on Hoyo games or new age gacha games, right? No matter how unlucky they've been, they will never compare to what we had to fucking go through. I think maybe the closest might be shit like, Tectone being a dumbass and spending dropping 10K, 10 grand on Staff of Homeless back in the day in Genshin before Genshin implemented its own weapon pity. That's maybe the closest I can think of. But I mean, that was a conscious decision, and you know, I would argue our horror stories are even worse, even if technically we didn't spend as much money as he did in one go. Yeah, man, the war stories, the PTSD that us FGO veterans have when it comes to rolling on this fucking game. They were so bad that, you know, we would take a pity. Oh yeah, and before I forget, there's one thing I forgot about how the pity originally worked. Now that I think about it, so the pity immediately disables if you roll a character, if you roll the limited rate up like early. So the pity activates automatically at 30 multis, right? Pseychie's already mentioned, already gone over that himself here. But the games, if you roll the limited 5-star early, right? You get, so let's say, for example, you get super lucky. You roll the first copy of a new limited 5-star servant in FGO on your first multi-roll, or hell, even your first single, right? Let's just give you that amount of luck. The game counts that as your pity. So because that's how it works, you can get really lucky getting your first copy, and then you can get absolutely fucking shit on if you have terrible luck afterwards, and spend more than 30 multis worth of Saint Quartz in FGO, and still not get a second copy of that character if you're interested in trying to roll for more copies. And again, remember in the last video where we went over MP levels, where the higher the MP level of a servant, the more damage their MP does. All right, where the more effective their MP gets if they don't have, you know, a damaging MP. So it's like, yeah, in FGO, it's a legitimate. There's a very legitimate reason to roll for extra MP levels if you're trying to min-max like your farming strats and shit. And again, farming is like I said in the last video, like 90 to 95% of the game. So it's kind of fucking important. Yeah, pity was god-awful in FGO. Technically, it still is, but at least they made it repeatable. That was probably the biggest issue with how FGO's pity used to be. Back when it first came out, like, I don't know, fucking 2-3 years ago. However long it's been. Thankfully, I believe recently, hopefully I'm not spouting fake news here, but thankfully, as of last New Year's or whenever they implemented this, yeah, it at least repeats. Still 30 multis, though, which is hilariously expensive. But at least it repeats. So I guess credit where credit is due. God. Anyways.
So yeah, this is a laughable excuse of a pity system. Okay, so this is a last-minute addition, but as of the announcements of the 9th anniversary, the pity system still doesn't carry over across banners, but it's no longer disabled after one trigger.
Yeah,
It's still 900
so
quartz for the limit, so baby steps, am I right? See, there's a popular saying in the player base. You don't choose the servant chooses you.
That's maybe among casuals. This is something that casuals would say. Because I obviously don't roll as much as us whales do. I don't know if I made this abundantly clear in the last video. No, I should have. I remember mentioning how much fucking money I spent on this game. So y'all should know how much of a fucking whale I am in this game, in case you guys... For those of you who are familiar with me, you will know. But for those of you who are not familiar with my background in FGO, I was one of the biggest whales in this game. At least on the... As far as content creators went on the NA side of things. Yeah, no, this is some bullshit. The fucking, you know, this whole you don't choose a servant, the servant chooses you. This is like an omega free to play / casual like bullshit thing to say. Not trying to say that as like an insult against them, because they weren't the ones who came up with it. I believe where this phrase originated was from like an interview that like a Japanese magazine or some shit, was it Comptic? I forget who it was, or which magazine or like which media outlet it was. But every year we get like an interview that apparently comes out of Japan like every year or so, around like what, maybe New Year's or around anniversary. I forget exactly when. Maybe they do it twice a year. I don't know. But back in the day, back when the devs were still known as the Lightworks, when they were still with the DW. I believe it was the game director who gave an interview with like a magazine media outlet, Japanese media outlet, whatever. And the media outlet, one of their questions was so can you explain something? It went something like, can you explain why this game has such low rates, right? Something like that. And the game director's response was something along the lines of this, right? Oh, we want to make it so that you feel like the servant chooses you rather than you choosing the servant, for the more immersive gameplay type feel. Remember that FGO devs are obsessed with like making everything like super lore based and shit. I kind of alluded to that in the last video with how, servant kits are designed and shit like that. They need to make everything like super lore relevant and stuff like that. At least it makes sense in a game like FGO where, the story's pretty heavy and, there's lore basically everywhere. So I can buy that at least. But what I don't buy is this whole servant chooses you bullshit. No, it's just an excuse for them to fucking slap a fucking 1% SSR rate onto a gacha game so that they can make more money. That's what it is, bottom line. And I say this as someone who's wasted tens of thousands of bucks on this fucking game. But my own personal assault aside, that still should not be an excuse to fucking swindle more money than they need to out of, anybody who wants to spend a little bit of money on this game. So no, I borderline hate this statement, but then again, it's something the casuals and the free-to-plays would say, because they'll never, not that they want to be fair, but then they're never gonna understand the absolute fucking hell that is rolling a bunch for an MP5 servant or whatever. So, yeah, basically this phrase can go fuck itself.
A couple years ago, this pity system actually didn't even exist. If you are not able to pull the rate up, then you better keep trying until you do. Not only that, it was common for a rate-up banner to feature multiple 4-star characters, and the rate-up would rotate on a daily basis or every 2 days. Players would roll on the banner when their desired 4-star was on rate-up, since the chance to pull it is 1.5%, half of the 3%. But when the pity was introduced, banners now split the rate-up chance for 2 4-star servants, meaning the individual rates to pull either is now split even more. I look at the many forums where players weren't able to pull.
So, to explain this one further, before the pity, while overall it's barely an improvement, one of the major downsides, its main drawback, its main flaw, was the fact that for some reason FGO, the devs decided to make it so that what is this fucking crunchy ass quality? The devs, for whatever reason, decide to nerf how often we can get the 4-star. Well, not how often we get the 4 stars, but how easy it was. It's not really easy either. How we could get 4 stars in general. So before the pity came out, how they used to do it was how Pseychie described. If there are multiple 4 stars on rotation, they would give us a banner with the 5-star. And then the first couple of days, it would have both or all the 4 stars on rate up. After those first couple of days, then they would rotate to a truncated version of that banner where it still had the original 5-star or the new 5-star, but it only had one of the total number of 4 stars that were available. So if you were looking for, you want to try rolling for one 4-star servant in particular, then naturally you would take a look at the schedule and be like, their solo rate up is on this day, so you just wait until that day. If you didn't care about the other 4 stars, and so you just roll when that day came, you just roll on that solo 4-star rate up rotation period. But when the pity system got introduced, when FGO's pity got introduced, they stopped doing that. At least in the beginning, they made it so that the 4-star servants no longer get any solo rate ups. Now I believe they have rectified that. I want to say, I think they just made it so that, they just put up multiple 5-star banners and they'd have each. Is that how they do it? I haven't rolled an FGO in a while because of personal reasons. But I want to say it's not so bad anymore. I could be wrong. But certainly in the beginning, before the devs knew what the fuck they were doing with pity in regards to pity. Yeah, that's what they decided to do, and yeah, needless to say, nobody liked it. Because 4-star servants are actually quite popular in FGO. For those of you who come from Hoyo or new Gacha backgrounds, and you're listening to this like, why do people care about 4 stars? Remember in FGO, people love their servants. It doesn't matter which rarity they come from. Naturally, of course, the 5-star servants are the most popular just in general. But there are 4 stars, there are 3 stars, 2, even 1 stars out there. Hell, even the 0-star servant that I mentioned earlier, they can only get from Friendpoint banner. People love their servants, man. And their rarity to a lot of players, it doesn't really matter what their rarity is. If they see a servant that they really like, they're just gonna go. They're gonna go for them. So even for 4 stars, and there's quite a few 4 stars that I really like. Hell, I even given some of my 4-star servants on my account, and I grailed their asses up to 100. So I'm no exception to that either. Just people really, really like 4-star servants, and so the decision on the FGO devs part to like basically nerf our ability to like pinpoint which 4-star servants we want and try to roll for them specifically, did not go over well. At least not among the Westerners. I don't know how the actual Japanese players in Japan took it. I want to say they didn't really appreciate that either, but you know, JP players spend a lot of money on Gacha, including FGO, so maybe they didn't really mind it too much. But I mean, they didn't like the 2 new Appen skill inclusions. So I would say I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that they probably didn't like this one too. But yeah, as you can see, a lot of us Westerners did not appreciate this either. Because yeah, we like our 4 stars, and if you nerf our ability to get them, we're gonna fucking let you know. So.
Hold 1 copy of their desired unit even after months of saving and spending an obscene amount of money. And I just thought to myself, this is literally just a PNG file. You're spending hundreds of dollars for this? Now,
one anecdote about this, because he's pulling. But we call these salt threads whenever 4chaners or redditors start bitching about how much money they spent on like a banner or something. We call these salt boards or salt threads. The most infamous one of this one was all the way back in the first year of the game, like the first couple of months of the game, back when Tama Caster first came out in NA for the Halloween banner. Tamamo was the first like waifu servant, I believe. Yeah, the first waifu servant who came out for FGO at the time, because I believe we had Gilgamesh was as our first banner, and then who was it? Kintoki? Berserk Kintoki, something like that. If Tama wasn't the first, she was definitely among the first. And so a lot of people, since we knew our clairvoyance even back then, because we all knew, oh yeah, FGO is 2 years behind JP, so we're just gonna look at everything that, you know, FGO, everything that, you know, JP has. Actually, no, Tama was the second one. Artemis or Orion was the first one, technically. Because of the very first event we ever had, the very first limited time event we ever had, which was the Moon Goddess event. And so because Tomo was like, you know, oh, she's the art support. She's like the meta art support. At least people considered it back then. She still is, but, you know, FGO players are fucking retarded. I think Castori replaced Tomo. Not going to get into that one, though, right now. But yeah, anyways, back to the original Tomo banner. Point is that a lot of people saved up for Tama Caster, and that was the first like mass exodus, that, as I like to call it, of the FGO NA player base, because people had grinded the game for like the past like 3-4 months leading up to Tamo's banner, and 3 months leading up to her banner, and just to spend all their savings and get jack shit, right? I'm not exaggerating when I say that if you want to roll on FGO, it is truly a fucking gamble. I played a lot of gacha games, obviously. I call myself the god of gacha for a reason. I played 12 different fucking gacha games, so I think I know what I'm talking about here. And let me tell you, at 1% SSR rates, you truly do not know if you're gonna get them or not. Arknights has 2% has a 2% 6-star operator rate. At 2%, it's like, okay, every once in a while you're gonna get a an early 6-star, like over the course of like a year's worth of rolls, for example. You can like reasonably expect to get an early 6-star outside of pity, right? Outside of Arknights' built-in pity mechanic. Like maybe once, twice a year, something like that. In Nikke, which has 4%, you can at those rates at 4%, you can reasonably expect to get an early. You can like every other multi, perhaps like every other or maybe every 3 or 4 multis, you can sort of expect to get like an SSR Nikke in that game. Azure Lane, which has 7% SSR rates, at those rates is like, oh yeah, like every other or hell even every multi roll you can probably expect to get an SSR, right? And if you don't, then well, you'll get an SSR eventually. And that game technically has no pity outside of ultra rare banners, because they don't need it. They've got 7% SSR rates, though the rate of chance itself is a different story. At 1% and below, right? FGO, any of the modern big gacha games, Hoyo plus Kuro. At 1% and below, you truly don't know what the fuck is gonna happen. You can get SSRs as early as your first multi. I mean, obviously, people can get that lucky, of course. But, like, the worst streak that I've had personally, the amount of Saint Courts that I had to spend to see my first SSR in a banner, was 1,700 Saint Courts back when Tama Lancer's banner first came out back in 2018. So to put that in perspective, in case you didn't notice the Saint Courts count that you get for an $80 pack, if you do the math, that's what, 1,700 divided by 80? Can I do math in my head? That's like 170 divided by 8. What is that? 2... carry the 1, like about 21 packs, something like that. 21. Let's just round it down to 21 packs. And then what? Actually, no, I'm doing my math wrong. This is why you never do math on stream or when you're recording something. You have to do 1,700 divided by 167. I have no idea how to do that. Let's just round it down like fucking 10. 10 packs, for example. 10 packs? Sure, 10 packs. Yeah, 1 pack equals $80. So let's just say, because I can't do math in my head right now, let's just say that it cost me $800 to see my first copy of Tama Lancer, and that was my worst streak. I know others who have even worse streaks than I do. I have a friend named X0 who is also a fellow FGO streamer. Who used to also stream FGO a lot back in the day. I watched when Abigail's band, Abigail Williams, our very first foreigner servant, very first 5-star foreigner servant, came out back in, when did she come out? 2019, 2020, sometime around then. I watched his rolls. He had to spend over 3,200 Saint Courts for his first fucking copy of Abigail. And I don't even want to do the math on that. 3,200, 1,700 for me. So he almost had to spend twice as much as I did for just one copy of Abigail. Granted, I believe he got other like spooks, sure, but the point is those weren't what he was looking for. The mind reels at just how bad some people's luck can get, and you never know. It could happen to you too. I mean, unless you don't spend that much in the first place, then obviously you don't have to worry about that. But the point is that if we have to spend that much, if us whales have to spend that much just to see one copy of the servant we're looking for, then for everyone else, you may never see them at all. No matter how much you think you've saved up, no matter how much you think you've worked hard to save up for the servant that you really want. That's just the reality of this fucking game, or at least it used to be before it got pity. Now, at least with pity, and especially now that pity actually repeats, now we actually have a finite cap on how much you'd have to fucking spend in order to see, like, an MP5 or MP6. So, thank God, I guess. was like, I guess. And to be fair, those kinds of incidents, like me spending 1,700 or my friend X0 dropping like 3,200 plus sync quartz for one copy, those are freak accidents. Like, statistically speaking, you should not be screwed over that hard. The point is that I'm trying to make is that the fact that it could happen to you, and it has happened more than you want to see, is absolutely nerve-wracking. Or at least it used to be again. Nowadays, again, thank God we don't have to worry about things getting that bad anymore. But it used to be like that. And boy, oh boy, it drove fear into those of us who were trying to like MP5 servants back in the day because, oh, these are our favorite characters or, you know, what have you. Or if you're just a whale and you just like rolling for MP5 everything like I used to back in the day. But yeah, all us whales have our horror stories that we have to tell. At least most of us. Unless you're just, you know, god awfully lucky, in which case I guess you can go fuck yourself. But yes, these salt boards certainly take me back to darker days, quote unquote.
After months of saving and spending an obscene amount of money.
Oh, one last thing, because I forgot to mention this earlier. Just to put my $800 Tama Lancer, first copy for Tama Lancer in perspective, I once spent $800 in Genshin fucking Impact. And I got C6 Yoimiya. Now, to be fair, I did get very lucky on going for Yoimiya, because I believe I got a couple early 5-stars, and like only one spook, so, and her her limited weapon, Thundering Pulse. So, to be fair, I got very lucky in Genshin. I've done C6 R1 rolls in Genshin before, and they usually cost around, like, what, $1,100, $1,200? But, still, like, for $800, that got me only one limited 5-star servant in FGO. I could get a full C6 5-star character in Genshin Impact. So, just to give you some perspective there. Or some more.
And
anyway.
I just thought to myself, this is literally just a PNG file. You're spending hundreds of dollars for this? Now, I've seen some pretty brain-dead takes on this matter, saying that FGO's rates are fair and generous. You know what I say in response? Bullshit. A
you tell him,
non-transferable
Pseychie.
pity that gets
You fucking tell him.
disabled after one use and requires 300 pulls to activate. Ask yourself this. Is this really acceptable in 2024?
No, it's
has
not.
A Spark system where you can hang on to these mileage tickets for as many and for as long as you want.
Even Blue Archive's pity is better, and I fucking love shitting on Nexon. That and fuck Blue Archive, even though I actually play it. And yet I would even take Blue Archive's pity over whatever the fuck FGO's is. I almost said Nikkei.
For 200 per rate-up character. Limbus Company's top-up packs are so generous that the $1 pack can buy you 10 daily pulls with the first top-up bonus. In Reverse 1999, after an SSR goes on an initial banner for 3 patches, they're added to the permanent pool. So Tooth Fairy released in 1.2 will be able to spook you from 1.5 and onwards. I myself have a set of standards when it comes to how a gacha system...
Actually, Reverse's whole thing of adding formerly limited time characters to their perma pool after like 3 patches, that is something I've never heard any other gacha game do. We've always talked about it, or in some of my gachas, players have kind of discussed it, like in FGO especially. There've always been talks among players, and that goes something like, oh, like Los Angeles DW back in the day, and now Los Angeles should like add like really old limited time servants to permapool, like for example Shuten Doji or Raiko to 5-star as like perma 5-stars. They've never done anything like that. They have expanded the perma pool, to be fair, but only with like new servants. The only way FGO adds servants to their perma pool is if they come out as permanent. If you come out as limited, you will never leave limited pool, or it's not even a pool for that. They will never lose. They have no limited time servant in FGO has ever lost, in quotes, their limited status. Like not even Gilgamesh, who was our very first limited servant back in the day when FGO first came out, at least for NA. Maybe it was somebody different for OG 2015 JP FGO, but I'm pretty sure it should be the same. All our banner history for the most part has followed JP quite closely, with a couple of exceptions with like unique NA banners, but they're not anything crazy or anything. Like they never like introduced like new servants early or anything like that. Just old servants basically, giving old servants like extra rate ups, basically extra reruns, for the most part. I think in Genshin, too, people are like, oh, why don't they add a Perma Geo character? Because in Genshin, we still don't have a Perma Geo character yet. At least I don't think so. Yeah, we don't. Pretty sure we don't anyway. So people were like, oh, why not just add Albedo as a perma character? It's not like anybody's gonna want to roll for his ass, like willingly these days anyway. So like, yeah, why not just put Albedo as our first Perma Geo character into Permapool? Stuff like that. So it's good to see a gacha actually do something like this.
From 1.5 and onwards. I myself have a set of standards when it comes to how a gacha system is handled. There's a reason FGO is the butt of every joke when it comes to this. Well, the rates are bad, but at least it's not as bad as FGO. That quartz count better read 900, or else...
Honestly, FGO's rates aren't even like the worst out there, right? Technically, the Hoyo games and the big gacha games, the big new gacha games these days have like worse base rates for their top rarities, right? In Hoyo games, it's always 0.6%. Maybe it's slightly higher in Zenless. I forget what Zenless's like base chance for an S rank is. Maybe like 0.7. Oh, big deal. But and what? Snowbreak is 0.8, or are they 0.6 as well? I forget. GFL 2s is definitely 0.8%, though, I want to say. At least it should be. So yeah, technically, new gacha games these days have worse base rates, but nobody complains about, well, I mean, I'm sure some of us do. I certainly do. But the reason why they're not memed, their base chances for pulling a 5-star aren't memed, is because they have softened hard pities. At least hard pities, right? And you don't have to spend 30 multis like you would in FGO. Right? You just need to spend, like, for Hoyo games, you just need to spend, like, 7 or 8. And that's a lot of gems, to be sure. No getting around that, but it's better than FGO, at least.
You ain't guaranteeing anything. Despite all of this, FGO has one of the most dedicated and committed fan bases I've seen. During its peak in 2017-ish, FGO was leading the top charts in terms of revenue. So even without a pity system, watching people throwing away their money at this game is unimaginable to see. When your life...
Yeah. I'm not surprised Pseychie, is this a fucking... Bro, this takes me back. Yeah, it's this. It's this, bro. Damn, he pulled out a fucking... This unlocked a core memory for me. I immediately recognized the this stream overlay. I immediately recognized it. I was like, damn, that looks familiar. Oh shit, is it? And I look on the bottom left. Oh damn, it's this. I can't believe he both pulled up this fucking clip. It was better he pulled up a this clip than a fucking not a whale clip though. That fucker. Anyways, what was I gonna say again before this clip got me? Oh, there goes another YouTube subscriber sub alert. What did I want to say before this? Oh yeah, that's right. So, one, I'm not surprised that Pseychie would say this. That oh yeah, he finds it unimaginable to see people just toss money at a game like this. Because again, he started with Genshin Impact, so he's used to Genshin standardization of gacha, where it's like, oh yeah, you have soft hard pities, or at least hard pities, and then you have to spend like, you know, no more than 10 multis to at least get one like S rank or 5-star character. Keeps calling serve, and you can tell which game I come from. And you know, it might not be the one you're looking for, but at least you have a coin flip rate up, right? And if you don't get them the first time, the rate up that is, you don't get them the first time, you'll get them the next time. So it's like you always have something to work towards in new gacha games, right? There's always hope. OG FGO, hope is a fucking hope is a fallacy. It's a fucking lunacy. I mean, makes sense why the head company is called Type Moon, right? Before Project Moon, we had Type Moon. Anyways, but yeah, like he brings up the 2017 revenue chart here, and he says that it's unimaginable to see people fucking toss money at a gacha as shitty as FGO, especially back when it didn't have pity. But remember, this was before gacha games really blew up, at least out here in the West. Gacha games were already like pretty poppin', right, out in the East, Japan mainly. And then China was back in 2017. China was like starting to pick up on it. It would still be at least like a couple years though, obviously, before the advent of like Genshin. I say Genshin, but even back then, I think Girls Frontline 1 was starting up, Honkai Impact, or at least MiHoYo was working on Impact, and their other previous games before then, like Honkai Gakuen and Gun Girls, I think they're one of the first games was called. So they were all, China was like starting to rev up their gacha engine and their gacha muscle back then. And clearly before Genshin was ever, was it before it was ever conceived? I think Dalway said they were developing Genshin for like 4 years before it came out. So they probably were in the middle of developing Genshin back then. But still, this was long before, several years before gacha would like really start popping off out here in the West. The reason why FGO did as well as it did is because, remember, back then the Western fan base, at least the anime fan base, was like pretty big into Fate. Like I said, we always are. It's just that back then, remember, UBW, Unlimited Blade Works, was like fairly recent. I forget when exactly Unlimited Blade Works came out. Was it like 2014, 2015, something like that? And remember how I said Anime Expo is like the pilot event for FGO, right? Because it officially came out on July 4th. America. And like, how Aniplex wanted to use Anime Expo to use that as like promotion for their game for the NA server of FGO, blah blah blah, whatever. I think back in 2015 or whichever year that that UBW was like premiering, right? It was like the premier anime for Anime Expo 2. So like 2-3 years before NAFGO came out. So yeah, Fate was still pretty big on a lot of people's minds back then. I don't know how much people think of Fate anymore because Fate hasn't released like a new anime as of late. For a while now. I don't really count APOC because APOC was a Netflix exclusive or some bullshit like that. I don't know. And again, Case Files didn't have the Fate tag, so I would imagine a lot of people didn't realize that it was part of the Fate universe. But yeah, back then gacha games were not like poppin'. They weren't like super huge like they are now. So FGO was like one of the first like actual anime gachas that we had that us weebs could get into and enjoy. Like, this is literally one of the only ones, at least one of the only big ones anyway. I can't even think of any other like quote-unquote big one, maybe outside like maybe Summoner's War, because I think technically Summoner's War is older than the NAFGO server. Was it? I want to say it was, or I want to say that it is. That, and I think Dragon Ball Dokkan Battle, I believe. Dokkan Battle is definitely older than the NAFGO. It's like, 10 years old by now. So, yeah, that too. But yeah, it was definitely one of the bigger ones. So, it's not like we had a lot of other options to play, like, other, like, big, like, anime-themed gacha games. So, that's why it did really, really well. FGO back then just did not have a lot of competition.
FGO was leading the top charts. Money at this game is unimaginable to see. When your live chat literally tells you to stop polling and pay rent instead, maybe it really is time to stop. This is when gacha games were...
That is a bit of a meme. A bit. But yes, I said before that I like going... I used to roll, MP5 servants every time a new servant came out, because back when I still had a proper job and I still had a stable income, I would go for MP5 all 5-star servants. if I were to show off my account right now, I mean, go watch any of my 80 plus FGO Wales logs to get a better idea of what I'm talking about. But like MP5 servants can cost anywhere from what, like as little as 400 to like $2,000. So yes, it's a bit of a meme, but at the same time it's not, because yeah, 2,000 bucks sometimes is, I hope it's not your rent money. That'd be a little bit expensive. A little bit, yeah, understatement. But yeah, it's quite the hefty price.
Were relatively underground, but while you hear about the rise of loot boxes or grinding battle passes, FGO went completely under the radar by major Western news outlets. Despite this,
yeah, because gachas weren't like a concept of like a well accepted concept. Well accepted is a weird way to put that. Gacha, people weren't familiar with the idea of gacha. Now, it's not that it never existed, right? Whenever Westerners be like, oh my god, gacha ruined gaming, like who the hell came up with gacha, blah, 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 yap, bitch about gacha games and whatnot. I just point out, bro, we had baseball cards. We have TCGs. Is that not gacha? It's just a physical form. Right? Oh, but you can resell your fucking, good cards again. Yeah, okay, pull a fucking good card right now. Are you gonna pull $1,000 card like tomorrow? Chances are no, so shut your fucking trap. So yeah, gacha has always existed. It just didn't exist. It didn't exist in the minds of us Westerners in this form. Like in like a video game form. And I would like to point out that because Pseychie brought up the comparison. Well, did he really compare anything? He just brought up the whole loot box thing. Technically, gacha and loot boxes are the same concept. They're similar for sure. In my mind, though, how I see it is that gachas are still distinct from like just loot boxes, because loot boxes can be part of any game, right? Your game doesn't have to be a gacha, but it can have loot boxes, right? I mean, think Overwatch, for example. But a gacha game relies on the loot box concept as like one of their major selling points. So I make like a mental distinction between those two, between loot boxes and gacha. And not only that, with Pseychie talking about how FGO like flew on the radar, yeah, I think I already explained that. Us Westerners, gacha didn't hit mainstream yet. That wouldn't happen until Genshin.
This game has insane retention of its existing player base. Like a sad case of Stockholm Syndrome, there is a sizable section of players that no matter how poorly the game treats them, they will keep playing, and they will keep coming back like cockroaches. I've seen players announce that they will save.
If he's saying this specifically for FGO, I disagree. That's every gacha. Or at least every gacha has that potential. You always, it's especially true in FGO though, where people, there's even a famous meme comic showing Gudako, the deformed version of the female protagonist game, playing FGO on her phone, and it's like, fuck this game. Like after she rolls all the same quartz on a banner just to get nothing, it's like, fuck this game, I'm out. Like I'm gonna quit. And like 2 panels later, she's picked up her phone playing FGO again. So it is especially true in this game. However, if Pseychie's only saying that against FGO in particular and not really direct that towards anything else or any other gacha, I have a problem with that, because every gacha has that potential. I will say this. FGO is one of the most unique gachas to this day. There is no other game that is quite like this, with all its flaws, but also with all its good points too. The good points mainly being the story and its gameplay. I consider its gameplay a net positive, because it's probably, at least among the gachas I currently play, it's the most skill-based, turn-based gacha out there. Star Rail could never dream of being as skill-based as this game is. Maybe Girls Frontline 2, but I wouldn't really consider Girls Frontline 2 to be that. It certainly doesn't compare to something like FGO. Girls Frontline 1 maybe actually. Girls Frontline 1 might actually compare to FGO, but Girls Frontline GFL 1 is also weird, where it's like it's like a hybrid RTS turn-based bullshit thing. Well, not exactly RTS, but like turn-based and like almost like a sort of Mega Man-ish, like Mega Man, that one Mega Man game for Game Boy. I forget what that Mega Man game was, the name of it anyway. Or like the Mega Man game where you have like 9 tiles that you can control Mega Man on. He just kind of runs around on them, shooting enemies on the right side. It's kind of like that. So I don't even know if that even compares properly. Like, it's not really a turn-based game, but anyways. Yeah. Point is that FGO provides an experience that no other gacha game does. Like, when you play FGO and you really get into it, it's hard for you to pick up another gacha game that kind of gives you that same feeling, or that same sort of satisfaction, almost. Like, despite all the shit I've talked on FGO, right? It's still my personal favorite gacha game. Not only because I already sunk a ton of fucking money into it, so part of this is definitely sunk cost fallacy. But also because this game is just genuinely provides an experience that I have not found in any other gacha. And I doubt any new gacha will ever be able to emulate that. I mean, they won't. Like, FGO's like every gacha game is its own thing, of course. So, you know, it's gonna be very hard to like get like the exact same feeling out of every gacha game, or between 2 different gacha games, I should say. But still, FGO is certainly unique, and I think that's what keeps pulling players back. Not necessarily because of like some, you know, dumb fucking Stockholm syndrome. I don't know. I just don't like the way he puts it. So, for some people, perhaps maybe. But for me, the way I see it, FGO is still a good gacha game, at least in some respects. Clearly not in a lot of others. But what it does good, or what it does well, it really leaves an impression on you. And that alone is enough to keep a lot of players constantly playing, or at least coming back to get their asses reamed by its 1% SSR rate gachas over and over.
Save up for the next 2 years, then go all in on one servant that they saw on the Japanese servers. That is true dedication. It should be made clear that not getting what you want after diligently saving up for months.
Yeah. One note about what Pseychie said about the dedication part. You probably will not find any other gacha community, Western gacha community at least, more dedicated than the FGO player base. Remember, the FGO NA server is still, to this day, even after 7.5 years, 2 years behind the original JP server. We have to wait 2 whole fucking years for all the new shit that JP gets. Obviously, it has advantages and disadvantages. The clear advantage is that we just see everything that's coming our way, so we can just prepare for them ahead of time, right? We have 2 years to prepare for all the new shit. But at the same time, the clear disadvantage is that we have to fucking wait 2 years. I have always said that we should only have to wait 1 year. I think 1 year is a good compromise. Where it's like, oh, we see what JP gets. Okay, we have a year to prepare. Right? That's fine, in my opinion. Maybe it can be a little bit even faster than that. Like maybe only 6 months before. That might be even better for some people. But we're never going to get that. We're never going to see that. At least NA is never going to see that. They're never going to accelerate our content. At least it hasn't happened for 7.5 years, so why would they start now? But yeah, you know, you think you see all the Hoyotards out there like bitching like, oh, why do we have to wait so long for this servant or that servant, right? Whenever Hoyo fucking drip markets a new character, oh, why do we have to wait 6 weeks or like fucking 2-3 months for his new next character? Bitches don't know.
Feels absolutely disheartening. It feels like the game is not respecting your time and dedication.
I mean, no gachas do, to be fair.
Pity is the one trump card that you have as a player. It's the safety net to catch you in case you get screwed by bad RNG. And in my opinion, is considered a standard to have. I've
Yes.
stated this in a previous video, but
Pity should be standard for gachas, yeah. Because if you don't have pity, you get FGO, or other gacha, old school gachas back in the day that didn't have any pity at all.
if a gacha game I review does not have a pity system, then it's an instant failing grade for this section. The pity is the light at the end of the tunnel. No matter how atrocious your luck is, you can at least see the finishing line in distance. Because if it doesn't exist, then aren't you just gambling? I know reaching 330 polls without the rate up is unlikely, but the chance of it is not zero. I know this because it's actually happened to me once. It's like a creeping sense of anxiety that you know that you can throw hundreds if not thousands of dollars at the game and it will refuse you to give you what you want. It has happened before, and it will keep happening.
Hey,
Going
it's
back
my
and looking
video.
at some of the forums years back really makes me want to ask, but damn, are you okay?
Actually, which clip did he use from me?
What?
That's
has
missed
happened
right
before.
there.
And it
Ah, yes, this one. So this is my gacha, like not my gacha, my YouTube channel like intro video. Because if you go, all YouTube channels can like set like an intro video at the top of their on their channel page as like oh, watch this video to like get a sense of what this YouTuber is like, that sort of thing. This is mine. So let me explain the context for this video. The most expensive Merlin NA. So, because I was still MP5ing everybody at the time, and because I was an insane farmer back then, I decided to roll for to go for MP5 Merlin, get 5 copies of Merlin, and I decided to individually level every single one of them, which is why I have this total list of materials and everything that it cost. And in case you haven't really played gacha games, there's no reason in any gacha game to level up each individual copy of a servant or just a character in general, right? You roll multiple copies and you just combine them. That's it, right? I mean, in newer games, you don't even get individual copies of a character. The game just gives you tokens, right? So you can't even do that anyway. But remember, in FGO, because it's an old school gachas typically allowed you to acquire like multiple individual copies of a character. And if you really wanted to, you can level up each and every one of them. The problem is that if you decide to combine them, it just wastes all those materials because you just combine them all into one servant anyway. It's not like that servant gets any stronger. So, in my infinite wisdom, and this is just a flex video. That's all it is. I decided to roll for MP5 Merlin and an individual level all of them. The reason why it says MP6 at the end there is because I forgot that I was gonna do that, and I combined my first 2 copies early. So I was like, oh, guess I could better go for a roll for another copy. And this was before the servant coin issue, by the way, long before, like 3-4 years before. Because this video, when Merlin came out in 2018, the latter end of 2018. So yeah, this is literally 6 years ago. 7 years ago by now? Something like that. 6.5 years ago. Just to give you an idea of how much of a fucking whale I was back then. And how hard I fucking grinded this game. Back then. I would do this again actually with Scotty, and I would go even crazier on her ass with MP10, but that's a story for another time. Similar story actually, but won't get into it here. So yeah,
it will keep
that's the
happening.
context for that video.
Going back and looking at some of the forums years back really makes me want to ask, but damn, are you okay? But then again, before I start pointing fingers at people accusing them of having gambling problems, part of the blame does lie with you. You kinda chose to buy into this system, so in a way, if you believe this game isn't respecting your time and money, yet you keep playing it, that's on you. If I catch you topping up the most expensive quartz pack and you're rolling without a pity system, then I'm still gonna go, damn, you just gambled away $80. When I saw my Saint Quartz count go from 4
That's half and half. I actually have the same stance towards this Pseychie statement here as I do with when I did my Mr. Pokey right about power creep video. I'd say Pseychie is like half right. On one hand, yes, if you bitch about this game and yet you still spend $80 on it anyway to try to get a servant that you want, then you're a fucking dumbass. And that applies to me too. I don't shy away from the fact that I'm a pretty big fucking dumbass for deciding that I want to MP5 every servant in the game. I knew that going into it, and that's never going to change. I call Gacha trash, yet I play them anyway because they're my favorite kind of trash. So, of course I'm going to keep playing. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's not all on the player either, right? You have to understand that the devs didn't have to make this game the way it is either. I think it's unfair to just pin the blame on just the player alone. Maybe Pseychie will also be like, okay, yeah, this is also part of the dev's fault too. It's not just the player's fault like Mr. Pokey did. But we'll see. I did pause the video after all, so maybe I'll mention that later. But yeah, I just want to get this out there right now in case he doesn't mention it. But yeah, the developers also need to be, conscious about how they want to price their game and how fair or unfair they're making it. And just telling people that, like, hey, like, this is kind of your problem, isn't exactly going to fix anything, right? Because, and especially in this case for NAFGO players, us NA players are fucking second-class citizens, third-class citizens even, bro. Like, JP will never listen to anything we say. I mean, Pseychie, you're a fucking Genshin player too, so you should kind of understand where I'm coming from here. Mihoyo ain't gonna ever listen to fucking whatever you have to say for any critiques you have about Genshin Impact. The only people that these East Asian gacha studios and companies and publishers will ever listen to are their own home player bases, right? Their home audiences. In the case of FGO, they're only going to listen to their JP players. In the case of Chinese games, they're only going to listen to their Chinese players. So no matter what we say or do, they ain't going to change shit. And that's just the brutal reality of the situation. So it's like, yeah, you can tell people that, yeah, part of this is your problem too, but at the same time, it's like, you expect us to do anything about it? Right? Like, do you seriously believe that we have any agency over the situation outside of just choosing to play this game or not? Or choosing to play these, stupid-ass gamble games or not? And especially because I've said that gacha games are kind of like their own genre of video game. To elaborate on that one a little bit further, I think that gacha games are like kind of their own thing when it comes to like the gaming sphere, I suppose. I suppose I can say. They're not quite like regular games, because regular games, what separates gacha games from regular games is that for regular games you can pick up and play them at any time, right? They're more fair in that regard. If you can, if you consider that to be if you could consider that to be like a counter of fairness, I suppose. But gacha games, unless outside of a few exceptions, of course, gacha games got you playing every day pretty much, because most gachas got like dailies and shit, or like stamina systems where like, oh, you better spend the stamina, don't cap on them, otherwise you'll be wasting your stamina, and you have to use your stamina to farm materials and shit. FGO. So gacha games are a little different in that regard. And those differences kind of contribute to why people keep playing these games. Keep playing gachas and keep up with them. And, the whole point of a gacha game is to try to roll for new characters too. That's what they're built on. So it's like, you can have a situation, such as myself, where we talk massive shit on gachas and yet we still spend anyway. And that to someone like Pseychie or to other people who aren't as familiar with gacha games, that might seem like a contradiction. That seems like a paradox. Like, you talk shit on gachas, but you still spend money on them anyway? Well, if you play them to any extent yourself and you actually get into them, right, and you actually keep up with them for a while and you're actually big fans of them, like, it's kind of hard to explain this to people who aren't like dedicated fans of gacha. I don't know how much Pseychie enjoys gacha games. Obviously, he enjoys them enough to make to build his YouTube channel on them, to be sure. But again, like I said in my last video, I heard that for most of Pseychie's gacha review videos, he only plays them for a month and then he does a review on them. And I've already stated that that's far too little time. Like, you better be playing these gacha games for at least a fucking year before you decide to make a fucking gacha review on them. And for FGO, he's actually done that because he said he's played this game for 2.5 years. So for that one, for this video, which is why I'm starting with this one, yeah, that's perfectly acceptable. I'm cool with that. But like like his latest gacha review video is on what, GFL 1? I doubt you've played that game for more than a year. And GFL 1, I'm surprised you even made a video on GFL fucking 1 of all gacha games. Holy fucking shit. I mean, that in itself deserves commendation, but still. Did you play it for a year? Maybe you have, actually. I don't know. I have to watch that video. But as of right now, I'm not too sure. I'm not so sure if I want to believe that he has, but before he actually, proves it or anything. Let's see. I'd like to be proven wrong, but there are my 2 cents on Pseychie's statement about that.
1400 to 500, I thought to myself, what if something like this happens again? What if I save up to, let's say, 800 quartz, go for my next target, and then they just don't show up? How would I feel about the hundreds of resources that I piled up? How would I feel about the billions of QP that I have and nowhere to spend it? It's not the same as having a mileage system where the pity is retained. If you want to maximize the chances of your desired targets, you can't even try to dip into other banners. I also want to talk about the exclusivity of some servants. The majority...
So, Pseychie's totally right, actually. In old school gacha such as FGO, especially if they don't have pity, it's like, yeah, if you don't get who you want, go fuck yourself, right? And especially in FGO, back during the middle of its life cycle, when you didn't know when exactly an old servant would get like another rerun or anything, like another rate up banner or anything like that. If you missed out on whatever banner they have right now, it's like, well, shit, what do we do, right? I get Pseychie's stance on that, or his thoughts on that. It's like, what the fuck, man, right? Why, there's no way to guarantee a character that I want right now, like, how do you deal with this? Well, the short answer is you just fucking deal with it. That's how us FGO players have survived for all this time. I know people, some of my viewers even, who have gone years without a particular servant that they've been trying for. Like, I know this one dude, I think this is how I remember it. I know one of my viewers who kept going for Jalter, and he's also a year 1 player. He's played ever since Jalter's first banner or some shit, and every time Jalter had a rate up, he went for her. For the first 3 or 4 of her banners, he never got her. And then finally, like fucking, 5 or 6 years later, he finally got her or some shit, right? Like, we just deal with it. There's no other way to put it. Obviously, it's a double-edged sword, right? Obviously, you want whichever character it is that you're a fan of. You'd rather get them now and get them with a guaranteed chance to get them instead of whatever the fuck FGO makes you deal with, or made us deal with for the first 5 or 6 years of its life cycle. And how new age gacha games do it is much more preferable. But I will say this, even though I don't really like the whole phrase like suffering builds character or whatever the fuck, or like hardships build character, however that phrase goes, like it's a saying for a reason. While FGO players are not faultless, they have their own they have their own fucking dumbass sides to them, of course. Such as, Castoria plays Tamamo. Holy fucking shit. The fucking retardation. I think it's safe to say that we don't bitch as much as a lot of other gacha communities do. Especially not Hoyo ones. Hoyo, new age gacha players, quite frankly speaking as a fucking gacha boomer myself, y'all are fucking spoiled. Y'all are fucking spoiled by all this soft pity, hard pity shit. Right? That you can actually, if you're smart enough and you actually plan ahead, you can actually sort of game the gacha system, right? In order to get exactly who you want. That doesn't exist in older gachas, at least not most of them. And yet, y'all have lived with that. Y'all have lived basically with the silver spoon in y'all's mouths for the past, 4 or 5 years, however long Genshin's been out for. So, like, yeah, of course, because Pseychie started with fucking Genshin Impact, yeah, he wouldn't understand this. He wouldn't understand what it means to be dedicated to a single gacha game for that long. Well, I say that, but he's played FGO for 2.5 years, so clearly he has at least some sense of it. But he doesn't get the full picture. So yeah, it's no wonder he says he doesn't quite understand why anybody would do this.
Majority of the shiny 5 stars are limited, meaning you have to wait until a rerun of them to have a chance of obtaining them. There are a couple here and there that are added to the standard pool, and there's also the weird...
No, if he's talking about limited... oh, no, I think he's only talking about, like, new 5-star servants who are added as, perma. Again, I said this before, but I'll say it again. No limited 5-star who came out as limited, has joined perma pool. The only 5-star servants, or even 4-star servants too, for that matter, who are part of perma, came out as permanent servants from the get-go.
Story-locked servants, where they can drop as part of the story banner, which is permanently available, except they are blended in with the standard pool as well. So even if you waste your quartz rolling on this banner and get a 5-star, you are not guaranteed to get a story-locked servant. You could just get spooked by a permanent servant instead. What is even the point of this banner?
Story banner is, think of story banner as like Genshin's Wanderlust Invocation. It's the reason why I call Amber, Kaya, and Lisa story lock characters, because they function the exact same way. So if you played Genshin and you've rolled on Wanderlust banner, think of FGO story banner as the exact same way, but we have a lot more story lock characters. And no, there's no point in in rolling story banner. Literally no point. The only reason why is if you want to roll for extra copies of how do I explain this? There are very exclusive craft essences you can roll in standard banner, or in story banner at FGO rather. That normally you only get one copy of them after beating each lost belt. That's kind of like your clear reward, if you want to think of it like that. If you want more copies of that craft essence for whatever reason, there is no reason. It's not like those craft essences are like really good in combat or anything. You would have to go into story banner to roll for them. But like literally don't do that. Yeah, just don't. Story banner has basically has no point, pretty much.
I haven't even talked about the 4 stars because FGO has a lot of them too, and at times even 3 stars locked behind limited banners. This game is home to some of the most diverse and well-designed characters, both in terms of aesthetic and gameplay. I think it's such a shame that these stingy rates make getting most of them extremely inaccessible. For the record, in case I forget later, there is an item called the Unregistered Spirit Origin,
yes.
or USO for short.
The Ultra with the top tier whale currency.
How do you get USOs? That's the neat part. You don't. Only if you pull an additional copy of a 5-star that you have already max limit broken can you actually get one. Due to the stingy nature of the gacha system.
So yeah, let me explain USOs. Because Pseychie actually didn't explain it fully. He covered the basic part, but there's a couple details he missed out on. So specifically, in order to get a USO, I think he explained that full acronym. They're called unregistered spirit origins. You only get them after you get any 5-star servant, either standard or limited, or even story locked, from the MP6 copy onwards. Let that sink in for a moment. Not only do you have to be whale enough, or at least, play the game for long enough, to acquire any 5-star servant to MP5, but you also have to start rolling more copies of them from that point forward. Yeah, the USO system is one of the most dog shit systems I've ever seen in any gacha game. Like, it is unapologetically whale. And I know I said in the last video that I had I've always thought, at least before the 120 system, that FGO always tried to hold back how fucking much money you'd have to spend on this game sometimes. The USO system has actually always been part of the game. It's been here since year 1. I want to say it's been part of the game ever since OGJP FGO too, back in 2015. It is a bullshit currency. It is literally something only whales will ever see. Not even dolphins will see USOs, or at least not normally. I guess the only way dolphins would see USOs is if they decide to go for an MP5 rolling spree on their favorite servant or something, and then later they roll what? They roll a GSSR banner that happens to have that same servant on. It lands on that servant, and so they end up with its MP6 copies. Oh yeah, I have a USO now. What do I do with this? Well, now that you have to roll MP6 in order to fully max out a 5-star servant, 120 triple append, or hell, even quintuple append now, then sure, yeah, you'll see USOs then, obviously, because you have to roll for MP6. It's trash. It is utter dog shit. It's literally the 1% of the 1%. And yes, I've used USO summons before. He didn't even mention. Actually, let me go back to this menu. He didn't even go over the fact that you need 10 of these things. Who the fuck came up with this system anyway? Over at Delightworks back in the day. I don't want to suggest anything extreme here or anything, but maybe they should take a lovely plunge off of a bridge somewhere. They shouldn't harm themselves, but maybe trip over a rock and tumble over a railing somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, this system is your average FGO player will never have any reason to click on this tab. The one okay thing about this tab, though, that Pseychie didn't mention, I'm not surprised he didn't, because why would he, is that normally in this USO summoning section, or this USO redemption section here, all of the permanent characters, all the perma 5-stars are available here that you can exchange directly with 10 USOs if you ever get to that point where you have 10 USOs even. I guess technically two good things. One is that all the story lock characters, all the story lock 5-stars, basically not 4-stars, unfortunately, all the story locked 5-stars are also available here too, because the game considers them permanent characters, which is bullshit. But hey, that's how it goes. And in addition to that, with every banner, they also give you one copy that you can exchange for of with USOs, that is, of whoever's on rate up. So you can tell that Pseychie didn't have the scroll bar all the way at the top. If he did scroll up the top, you'd find whoever is on currently on Gacha rate up at the top of the USO summon list. And if there are multiple 5-star banners going on, it'll have all of them. So the one okay thing is that if you're so whale that you've accumulated somehow 10 USOs right? Then you can be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to use this guarantee to redeem for one copy of whoever's on limited rate up. So if you're trying to go for if you're trying to go for an MP5 copy of whoever's on rotation at the moment, you just need to roll for four of them, and you just redeem the last one. Or if you're trying to go for MP6, roll for 5, redeem the last one off of this shop. That's like the one saving grace. But again, it's not even a saving grace because nobody can use it outside like ultra degen leviathans such as myself back in the day. So yeah, this is horrible.
Already max limit broken, players will be able to take advantage of this mechanic. Even if you gave a free USO for every player, it would be completely useless for like 95% of them. In terms of other types of monetization, as stated before, there is no such thing as a 30-day supply or battle pass. FGO came out before the craze of battle passes in the 2017 period, but I don't see how they can't implement one now. Since if there was a good way for low spenders to dip into better resources, I would actually consider paying for it. The only valid way...
Yep. And they could certainly do it too. Like I said before, Azure Lane didn't have a daily pass, and it didn't have a battle pass, but now they do. And Azure Lane came out back in 2018, like a year after NAFGO did. So technically, I consider Azure Lane to be like an old school gacha. But like it's done its best to like kind of, you know, keep up with the times, to evolve and start including features and like microtransactions. It's a weird way to put it, but additional features, let's put it that way, to that newer gachas are doing these days. They're keeping up with the times. FGO is not. And, you know, I don't think a lot of us would object if FGO decided, hey, guess what, guys? We're going to start putting out, you know, our own monthly pass, our own battle passes. Yeah, I think people would pay for that as long as they gave out rewards that we thought were good enough. Nobody would really have a problem with that. As much as us Westerners bitch about, you know, battle passes, loot boxes, fucking microtransactions. Again, gachas are kind of their own sphere. So if FGO were to do it, I don't think a lot of us Westerners would really care that much. Matter of fact, a lot of us would be like, oh, cool, more Saint Quartz for at a discounted price. That's cool. Well, as Pseychie would say, we've probably been Stockholmed into like accepting basically any better deal than we have now. So,
or I guess two ways, is to buy the paid Saint Quartz for the daily paid pull, which is 66% off, but requiring a paid SQ instead. The other way is the special banners that occur twice a year. Because
Pseychie didn't mention it, you can think of that daily paid quartz. Us FGO players like to meme it as the daily disappointment. Nikkei has that too now. So whatever, if you play Nikkei and you've seen the whole like discounted like 150 gems every day, it's similar to that, but except in FGO you have to use paid quartz, or in other words, you have to buy packs. I don't know if Nikkei requires you to buy a pack in order to do the daily roll, but if they don't, then what Nikkei does is technically better.
Here, known as the GSSR or Guaranteed
SSR.
These banners will include a predetermined pool of limited servants, and you are guaranteed to draw at least one of them at random. These banners can only be pulled on once, and they occur at New Year and Anniversary. They cost 15 paid quartz to participate in. 15 paid Saint Quartz will cost around $15, minus some uneven purchases with the packs. In the context of gacha games, $15 for a guaranteed limited SSR is a steal.
Yes, sir, especially in FGO.
Plex blind. Much of the player base will agree that pulling on the GSSR is a very good idea for a low spender.
So much so that personally, I consider if you are a free-to-play, you don't normally spend any money at all on FGO specifically, but you do spend money to roll GSSR, I actually still consider you a free-to-play. That's how high value GSSRs are in FGO specifically. Like Pseychie said, paying $15 for a guaranteed 5-star or top rarity in any other gacha, in any gacha game, would normally be a really, really good deal. In FGO, you are, like I think Pseychie said himself, word for word, verbatim, you are quite literally robbing Aniplex blind. The trade-off is that you don't know, all the GSSRs are random, you can't like pinpoint who you want, and it only happens twice a year.
This year in NA, they brought an additional type of GSSR called Destiny Order Summon 1 year early.
Did we have this? Well, I mean, clearly it's on here, so yeah, I suppose we did. I don't remember doing this. No, I'm pretty sure I did. I just forgot who I just forget who I rolled for.
Spending 30 paid quartz, you may select a roster of 5-star characters, one from each class, in which one of them will be summoned at random. The community loved this change. Look at the generosity of Lysango, allowing us to spend more of our money to build our own GSSR roster. So there's a couple things I want.
One thing about the about this banner, it's called the Destiny Order Summon or some bullshit like that. I call it the custom GSSR because that's literally what it is. You get to customize your own GSSR at a higher price. My problem with this is most people understandably really like this because most people are either low spenders, they're free to play, or they're dolphins, right? However, I still don't like this. Not very much. It's good that we have it. It's a nice little evolution in how FGO handles this GSSR. I still think it can be better though. The reason why is because how you set up this GSSR. Let me go to
1 year early. By spending 30 paid quartz, you may called for a low spender. This year in NA, by spending 30 paid quartz, you may select a roster of 5-star characters, one from each class, in which one of them will be summoned at random. The community loved this change.
I think I've already
Look at the generosity of Lysango, allowing us to spend more of our money to build.
This is a perfect frame to set this on. So as you can see, when you customize your custom GSSR, you select a servant from every single slot here, right? However, my problem with this is that you are forced to select a servant from every single class. I don't like this because there are players out there, plenty of players out there, who are like, oh, I need I'm looking for like a servant from a particular class. Let's say Lancers. I need a good Lancer, or I want a new 5-star Lancer because I'm kind of lacking the Lancer department, and I already have enough, let's say, Riders or Sabers. Well, here's the thing, because GSSR is still RNG, you can't choose exactly who you want. And you still have to set a servant for every single fucking class. Guess what? This GSSR can still fuck you up the ass too if it just gives you another fucking Rider or Saber. So I don't personally like this very much. I mean, again, full disclosure, I'm a big fucking whale. So yeah, of course I'm not gonna like it because I already have most of the servants in the game. And so not being able to pinpoint exactly a servant that I don't have yet kind of irks me. Duh. But it's not just, I would imagine it's not just me that's kind of, would be kind of bothered by that. There are plenty of players out there, like I just said, even free-to-plays, who are like, oh, I feel like I already have enough servants from this class. I don't think I need another servant from this particular class. I'm looking for a servant from another class, right? And this GSSR could still be better. It's, again, step in the right direction, so you love to see it, but it can still be better. In my opinion, how they should improve this custom GSSR is they just let you fucking choose like how many characters is this? Like 9 servants that you don't have yet, or literally is any 9 servants of your choosing, right? Not arbitrarily restrict them to like one of each fucking class, with the exception of obviously the extra classes because it's just kind of grouped together into one big blob, I guess. That's how they should do it. So that way it's a good deal. It's a good deal no matter how you cut it. Because even if you choose, like, since you have to choose your own servants, right? Most of the time you'll get who you're looking for. I mean, at that point, even then, I should say, it's not even that perfect either, because what if you don't have 9 different servants that you really want another copy of, right? And you rolled a 1 out of 9 chance and get fucked and get the one servant that you weren't looking for. But that's mainly a whale problem. And at that point, I'd be happy with that if it means that for the vast majority of other players who might have an issue with how this custom GSSR works, doesn't have to worry about that anymore. So I still think this custom GSSR can still be better, but Hey, baby steps, like Pseychie said.
Build our own GM. The Destiny thought of this way are considered massively valuable deals. But consider why they're thought of this way in the first place. These deals feel like heaven when compared to attempting to pull one of them manually.
Yeah, exactly.
The gacha game developer has full control over the rates and the exclusivity
These only feel good because the rest of the game is hot dog shit.
of its characters. The majority of 5 stars in the game are limited, when combined with the laughable pity system makes them quite rare to get. This is a problem that the game itself has invented. And the GSSR and the Destiny summon banners?
Create
Well,
the
that's
problem,
something
sell
I
you
like
the
to call
solution. I mean,
create the
technically
problem,
speaking,
sell the solution.
that's what
When you
gacha
take
games
a look
are
at
in a
the
nutshell.
generosity of other gacha devs,
But certainly,
such as
some
in
gacha
Nikkei,
games handle
where
it better
when
than
you use
others.
even free gems to pull a certain amount of times during the New Year banner, it will give you an SSR selector that lets you get a copy of any non-limited character. Because the vast majority of units enter the standard pool immediately, you could choose from about 90% of the entire roster.
Quick correction, not immediately. For most Nikkeis who enter permapool afterwards, they're not immediately available on permapool. You have to wait for their initial rate ups to end, right? And then they'll be added to permapool. And you can try rolling for them from standard banner with your wish list thingy. In the case of overspec Roppy, we had to wait like how long was it? Like a fucking month or so before she finally entered standard. So not immediately, but you know, Pseychie's still on the right track here.
This selector could be obtained by using free gems. So don't come in here and argue that FGO has a generous or fair gacha system, because when compared to the larger gacha space, this is not an argument that you can win. Something else I noticed is that if you go into the gacha menu of any gacha game, you can preview the kits of the unit, but that doesn't seem to be the case in FGO. So here's a question for you. Let's say I am a new player. I see that there is a rate-up banner on the 5-star character John Alter, or often abbreviated as Jolter in the community. Let's say that I'm interested in the design of this character, but I want to know what her entire kit
Everybody
looks like,
loves Jolter.
including passives, skills, and append skills, so that I can make an informed decision whether or not I want to commit some pulls. The question is, how do I do that? See, on the gacha screen, there's no tab or info page that reveals Jolter's kit, only a page explaining the rates. There's none of that in the news section that goes over each rate-up character except for what their noble
the
fan
FGO
does.
news is
So
laughable.
how do I get that information then? Because in all the gachas I've played at this point, the entire kit is outlined in the gacha page for you to view, including their stats and skills. I am grasping at straws here, but maybe if I go into the servant roster, I can maybe pull up Jolter's kit. Except you can't see the profile of a servant that you don't own. The only feasible way to see it is by going into the friend list, find someone that has Jolter, then tap and hold on it to see the profile. See, whenever a new servant gets announced on the JP server, they showcase their NP animation, and they show what it does on a stream, but they don't actually show their full kit. Only when players pull that character can that information be added to the wiki. So here's my challenge to you.
More details on that, actually. So, the community actually takes it a step further. When a servant is introduced on JP, there is a community online. I think they have their own Discord server too. They're called the Atlas Academy group, or whatever name they go by these days. They data mine shit from the JP servers, and as soon as the server goes up, they have the information up already. So even for us NA players, as soon as a new servant drops on the JP server, we can see what they do. It's kind of weirded. It's worded very weirdly. Sorry, English is not my strong suit, clearly. So it kind of takes like some finagling to see what exactly they mean, but we figure it out eventually, pretty quickly. More on this though. It's so much worse than what Mr. Pseychie is describing here. Not only can you not preview a servant, FGO, you can tell it's an old school game because of many things, but this is definitely one of the major ways that you can. FGO does not tell you anything, even when you have the servant, because you would think that in gacha games, right? If you guys play any normal gacha game, the game's like, okay, like you have this character, you want to know what they do? Sure, we'll tell you. This is their basic attack. This is their skill. This is their ultimate. This is their passives or talents or whatever the fuck they call them in whichever gacha game you play. And these are their other abilities that they can do, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they give you the fucking percentages. You don't get that in FGO. You don't get the percentages. Now, see, this frame that I'm on right now, Pseychie is looking up the numbers of a skill on a fucking wiki, a third-party website. This is not official. This is all fan-made, or fan-run, rather, sorry. FGO, the developers do not bother having any sort of, like, official... Maybe they might have an official form, but it's certainly Japanese only, if it does exist. It certainly doesn't have like an official third-party like resource page like this. Everything about FGO is community run when it comes to like how to research the game, like where you can go to look up what characters do, what servants do. Like in game, actually, I think he even showed this one right here. Let's see.
The JP server.
So as you can see here, right? The in-game servant profiles tell you their skills, but they don't tell you what their values are. Do you see any numbers here besides what their skill levels are or like how many turns they last for? No, they don't. It's never done that. I'll tell you what these fucking skills do because I've used Jalter plenty of times and I fucking memorized their numbers because I'm a fucking autistic motherfucker. Her first skill increases her crit strength by fucking 50% or something. And her star gather rate by like 300% or some shit. Something like that. I just ranted about how I know her numbers, but now that I think about it, I probably don't. I actually don't really use her first skill all that often either. But it's about a 50% crit damage buff and like a 300, maybe 500% star weight buff for her first skill. I know her other two skills, though. Her second skill is a charisma. It increases her team's attack, including herself, by 20%. 10 to 20% depending on skill level, yeah. And then it's a double charisma. It's actually not even just a charisma. It's a double charisma. So another 10 to 20% for allies specifically who have the dragon trait, mainly the Artoria, all the saber variants. There are also other servants who also have the dragon trait, but it's mainly for the saber variants because they all have dragon trait. And her third skill, it's a mana burst. So she has 30 to 50% buster buff for one turn. And she chops off like I think it was 500 health. She loses 500 health every time she uses that skill, but it's mainly for the buster buff. Well, she does have a buff now. I think does NA have it yet? Maybe not quite yet. Yeah, I think NA still has to wait a little bit longer. But she does have a buff in JP where her third skill now has a 50% charge, 30 to 50%. So now she has her own 50% battery. You don't get that in game. The game will not tell you. If you want to know the exact numbers of these skills, you have to go to the fucking wiki or ask someone. Because there ain't no way in hell you're going to figure this out in-game. Even if you use the skill in a battle, like the game doesn't tell you like what its value is exactly, even when you use it in-game. All you're gonna get is like a buff icon above their HP bar, and then like a little fucking little cute little effect of them using their skill, like a skill animation, basically. That's it. Like FGO is quite literally the only gacha game that I play that does not do this. That doesn't display you exact numbers when in a game where knowledge is everything. So it's like, yeah, it's no wonder people don't know how to play this fucking game properly. The game doesn't tell you anything. It's ridiculous.
When players pull that character, can that information be added to the wiki? A servant guide on that unit. When the next servant releases on JP, make a servant guide on that unit, but you can only use information given in-game. No looking anything up on a third-party wiki. That's what I thought. You, of course, will want all the info on but with a next character, can that information be added to the wiki? So here's my challenge to you. When the next servant releases on JP, make a servant guide on that unit, but you can only use information given in-game. No looking anything up on a third-party wiki. That's what I thought.
Well, I can, and I'm not saying that just be like, no, I'm not to be just to be a contrarian here to Pseychie. Like, I'm not saying that because, oh, like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. No, I can. It's gonna take some time, and I don't really pay attention to new JP servants these days. But I'm one of the few who know enough about this game to probably be able to do that. Of course, I don't know if I'll be able to give you like exact numbers. There are some things that you can see exact numbers for, like, heals or like charge skills. For like attack buffs or defense buffs or some things of that nature, those are going to be a little bit harder to figure out, obviously. But even then, you could probably figure it out. There are ways to calculate damage. We have on dedicated FGO Discord servers, we have like damage calculation bots. So all you would need to do is just run a couple test runs with a new character, with a new servant, see how much damage they do. If they have like a damage buff of some kind, you pop their buff and you see how much more damage they do. You just calculate that. And skills are also fairly standardized, especially these days in FGO. So like it's going to be very obvious if a servant has like a charisma, a 30% attack buff, a mana burst, that type of thing. So we could probably figure out like exactly, we can probably deduce what a character's kit is exactly like these days. But obviously most people can't do that now. I'm one of the few who probably has a chance to like unlock, like decipher what a character can or can't do. Like what their kits do. Most people certainly can't, though.
You, of course, will want all the information you can on a unit before making the decision to pull for them or not. If you are making a guide, you, of course, will want other people to know all the information about a servant before recommending them to pull or not. It is truly, truly baffling that information crucial to how a character works is not displayed in-game. I'll even show an example. Earlier this year, FGO did a collab with MaHoYo, a visual novel franchise belonging to the same Type Moon universe.
Before he goes on about that, one thing that I forgot to mention, what's even more hilarious is that when they added the append skills, they actually do tell you the numerical values of those. The reason is because they're universal. They don't have to change between servant to servant. They can just say, oh, for example, your A2 increases this servant's starting mana gauge by 10 to 20%. Or they'll tell you the exact number of that exact amount of charge depending on what your servant's A2 level is at currently. If you even have it unlocked, that is. So they'll tell you the number there, but that's only because those are universal appends, so that doesn't matter. You can just put that on every single servant. They still haven't done anything for the regular skills though. So
There
hilarity.
was a 5-star character called Kuonji Alice. So if I go into the official FGO JP website and look for the news announcement regarding the banner and the servant details, theoretically I should be able to get all the information I need, right? Okay, let's scroll down. Alright, so here we can see Alice's max HP and attack stats, we can see what her NP does, and even a link to an animation. But where are the skills? What about the passives? What about the append skills? It should be reasonable to expect that information from the official site, right? Because if you can't, don't you find it a little odd that you can't actually see what you're potentially spending real money for? Here's Reverse 1999, another turn-based visual novel gacha that allows for 3 actions per turn. If we click on the magnifying glass on the radar of SSR, we can see their full deck.
Reavers is probably the closest thing we have to FGO, actually, now that I think about it. It used to be Magia Record, but Magia Record's dead now, so... And Magia Xedra decided to copy Star Rail, so they've certainly pivoted quite a bit, haven't they?
The upgrades, the Ascension passive, the raw stats, and even their limit break buffs, including the full numbers of what gets upgraded by how much. Clicking on the 4 stars, oh look, we get the exact same thing. Some gachas even let you take the character for a test drive. I know there's a few cases where FGO does put out a test trial for a new servant,
yeah, but it doesn't
like the
do
anniversary or the New Year ones. But why not just put one out there for every character that goes on a banner? There's a few lines I want to draw that a gacha game should never.
Those trial battles don't even really tell you much either. Those trial battles really are only meant to let you like see their NP in person, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and I guess you get a ticket out of it too, but trash.
One of them is that the game should make it very clear what your money is buying you. I think the fact that you literally have to look up the information on an external site to get the full details is, in my opinion, a little shady.
It's bullshit.
So with all these components...
Nah, say it how it is, Pseychie. It's fucking bullshit. I'm fine with it for the most part because I'm used to it. I've done this shit for 7 years, 7.5 years. I'm completely fine with that. But I don't want to have to see other gacha players do what we did, and still have to do. I agree. It's fucking retarded that a gacha doesn't tell you anything. Again, I keep saying this. It's one of the many reasons why most FGO players don't know how to play the fucking game. Because the game doesn't even teach you how to fucking play the game in the first place. If you want to know anything about FGO, any extent that's more than just surface level, and more than just gooning over characters, if you actually are interested in its gameplay itself, you're not gonna learn shit, not from the game itself, unless you're just like a fucking genius, like you're like a savant, and you can just figure shit out just by playing it yourself and not having to like refer to other people, like look up guides or like talk to people on Discord or some shit. But no, outside of that, and most people are definitely not savants or geniuses. We're gacha players. What the fuck do you think we are? You think we're smart? Well, some of us are, but most of us aren't. Yeah, no, I agree. I take this three steps further. It's not just a little shady. It's bullshit.
Mind, it's only natural that I give a below expectations rating for this section.
And this section was gacha monetization. Yeah,
however,
as
I do want to give a
deserved.
few suggestions on how the system can improve.
Fucking deserved.
No matter how slim the chances they'll get implemented are. First, the pity will carry over across banners, and will have its pity decrease to 220 pulls.
Yes,
with the equivalent,
because that's the 20 multi-spark is standard. You see that in Blue Archive, you see that in Nikkei. Both Blue Archive and Nikkei have 20 multi-sparks, so they should reduce the pity down to that much too, to match them.
Of 600 Sane Quartz as opposed to 900. The 200 pulse mileage is quite common these days, and even then, this is still on the stingier side given most gachas are below this limit for pity anyways.
And that's... I would consider Hoyo, the big gacha Hoyos, how they do it to be a little different. Typically speaking, with the spark pity, even though they might seem stingier on the surface, remember that they come with their own advantages, such as in Nikkei's case, you can hold on to your gold mileage tickets and just spend them literally on any banner you want. That's like the best form of spark pity I think I've ever seen out of a gacha so far. The fact that you can even use your gold mileage tickets on collaboration characters. At the time of me recording this video, we've got the second Nikkei and Evangelion collab going on right now, and yeah, like you can insta fucking spark collab characters. Like most gacha games, I don't think would let you do something like that. At least I'm pretty sure they wouldn't. I mean, hell, even Blue Archive spark pity, even though it's not as good as Nikkei's, which is a shame. At the very least, with them. Right, their spark pity, if you got like multiple 3-star students on rate up, you can at least choose exactly which one of those rate up students you want to spark for. So in case you got one but you didn't get the other, you can just get the other one, right? Because that's supposed to be the trade-off. Whereas in the Hoyo games, the Hoyo model, I'll just call it that for now because that's easier. Yes, you don't have to spend as many multis, but one, it's typically a little harder to pick up gems in those games in the first place. It's harder to like accrue rolls in those games, and two, you can't exactly like just pick and choose which new 5-star you want. I mean, technically you can, just don't roll until then. But I think the biggest drawback is that for the Hoyo model, you have to. It's harder for you to like accumulate gems in the first place. That and their pity is not guaranteed, at least not the first time, right? Well, with new gachas, like especially Duet Night Abyss, I hear DNA's gacha works like this. Like the first time you roll for a brand new 5-star, the game will guarantee you that copy the first time, and then afterwards, if you want to go for more copies, then you have to deal with the coin flip, which I think is perfectly fair. But yeah, just my 2 cents on that.
Third, after a certain amount of time has elapsed, a 5 or 4-star will move to the standard pool. This is something, again, getting quite common in gacha games these days. Because I think it's such a shame because...
Is it like what was his exact one? After a certain amount of time, a limited nah. That's I actually hard disagree with that one. I don't know how many gacha games Pseychie keeps up with. I'm sure he tries out a lot of them because he's. I was gonna say he's not a gacha god like me, but now that I think about it, that sounds really fucking tacky. And now I'm just sounding fucking egotistical. As if I wasn't already calling myself something like the god of gacha. But what I was trying to say is that no, I just disagree with that. From what I can tell, anyway, the gachas that I'm familiar with, limited characters, most of them don't join permapool afterwards. Is there a gacha that I play that has ever done that? Azure Lane I know has done that, where they've taken like really old event limited boats and they have incorporated them as part of permapool. The downside to that is that they basically rotated out the older perma 5 stars though. So the only way you can get like some of those super old like year 1, year 2 SSRs now is by like praying that they're on rotation and shop or something, unfortunately. Or maybe you can get them as map drops or something like that, I don't know. But technically Azure Lane would be one of them. Who else? FGO doesn't do that. GFL1 doesn't do that, I don't think. If I remember correctly, anyway. Arknights doesn't do that. Genshin doesn't do that. Blue Archive does not do that. Nikkei doesn't do that. Well, unless you want to count, like, what, Overspec Rappi? Or, like, some of the Pilgrim, like, the Pilgrim characters, maybe? But, like, Pilgrim characters we always knew they always made it clear that they were gonna join permapool. So I don't really, personally, I wouldn't count those. But yeah, no, Nikkei doesn't really do it either, because Nikkei, even though they don't have a lot, they still do have several, like a handful of like seasonal characters, and they don't join permapool, like the summer servants, the summer Nikkeis, and the Christmas Nikkeis, those two mainly. They don't join perma. Kind of funny because pilgrims do, but whatever. Star Rail certainly doesn't. The fucking Hoyo game, so why would they? Ether Gazer doesn't. Snowbreak doesn't. Wuwa doesn't. Zenless, yeah. I really like to know which gacha games that Pseychie plays that does something like this outside of Reverse 1999, because obviously he's already mentioned that. So it's not that I doubt him, it's just that maybe he's playing gacha games that I haven't heard of yet, that are doing that. But in my experience, no, I don't think that's really a thing. That's not really a trend yet, anyway. It should be. I agree that it probably should be, but that has its own downsides too, where if you add too many characters to permapool too fast, especially early on in the game's life cycle, then you have a chance that your players are going to get kind of pissed off at that, because then it gets really hard to like try to roll for like one particular character in permapool if they might be really looking for. You can easily counteract that, of course, by just making it a lot easier to like pinpoint exactly who they want. But until a gacha game decides to have the balls to implement something like that, that's always going to be a concern. So yeah, no, I don't know what gacha games he's thinking of that makes him say this.
FGO has a lot of cool designs for servants, even for the lower rarities. Some of them are definitely showing their age, and I'm sure a lot of players would appreciate classics like Cleopatra or Gilgamesh becoming summonable as part of the permanent pool. The wait time can be like a year. Lysenko can keep their collab units and their favorites as truly limited, but after a year, most SSRs will be able to spook you. Get rid of the story-locked mechanic. Why does this even exist? You're not getting
lore. That's the only reason. I agree. Story ban is fucking pointless. There should be no reason why it exists. It's literally for lore reasons. If you think that Hoyo takes their game lore very seriously, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Guaranteed a story-locked servant when
still not an excuse to do it though. Any gacha game that leans too heavily on like trying to stay as lore accurate as possible is fucking retarded. Like, since Pseychie likes bringing up Nikkei a lot as an example gacha in this video, Shift Up put fucking Red Hood into the game. right? Red Hood isn't even supposed to be. She's not even supposed to be playable. She's fucking dead. Is that spoilers? It probably is. But for the sake of this argument, who cares? Well, I certainly don't fucking care. Red Hood's dead in story. She's not supposed to be playable. And yet, for some reason, she still is. So it's like the absolute addiction that some gacha studios, companies, developers, whatever you want to call them, have to trying to, circle jerk to their own lore as hard as they can is pretty fucking cringe. And I certainly hope that future gacha games don't fucking do that, at least not as much, right? In order to have like a serious story, you do need to stick to lore wherever it's appropriate, but not so much to the point where it starts affecting your fucking gacha too, like in the case of FGO. So yeah, no, I totally agree.
When you pull on the banner. So if you wanted a specific one, you would have to wait until that character goes on rate up anyways. Or alternatively, just give players a different type of summoning tickets for this banner exclusively, so they don't waste their resources on the story banner, like 5 freebie monthly pulls for it. So yeah, FGO Gacha?
Yeah, sort of like the standard banner rolls in like Genshin, Star Rail, Zenless, even GFL2. GFL2 does it best because I believe they give you standard tickets on a regular basis, unlike the Hoyo games. So yeah, if FGO were to do something like GFL2, I think that'd be at least an acceptable entry into making standard banner better or story banner better. But yeah, outside of that, it's either they do something like that or they get started working on something like that, or they just ditch fucking story banner altogether.
Very infamous. To sum it up briefly, that's how you're walking into. Next up,
you should join me here. All right, next section, the presentation.
For the record, I do not judge gacha games for 2 primary aspects, gameplay and story. Well, technically music too. Gameplay and music are both pretty subjective. As long as there's nothing glaringly wrong with it, then I don't have a problem. The story, well, I don't think a gacha game needs to have a good story to be a good game, like how people play Epic 7 for the PvP. Story is second priority.
I agree too. And I'll say this as somebody who fucking skips story for almost all his gacha games. Because when you play 12 different gacha games, you don't exactly have the time to read stories for all of them. FGO is the only gacha game that I really keep up with in terms of story. I do want to bring this up because specifically there's this sort of... It's not like widespread, I wouldn't say. Well, maybe it is. I just haven't heard people bitch about it enough, perhaps. But... there is definitely a vibe in new age gacha communities, especially, where it's like, if you don't read the story, like, why are you even playing a gacha game? And to that I say, well, these are gacha games, not gacha stories now, are they? If you wanted to read a visual novel, then sure, if you're not reading the story, why are you even playing that shit in the first place? But these are gacha games. You play these games, these are called video games, as much as, gacha games are kind of their own thing, like I said earlier. They're still video games, so you fucking play them. So because of that, story is always going to be secondary to the gameplay. You can have a dog shit story, but hey, if the gameplay's good enough, people, don't really care that much. I mean, look at fucking Azure Lane. Well, Azure Lane minus the gameplay part, because Azure Lane's gameplay is, auto every day. It's basically auto 24/7. But hey, at least it's got the waifus. So it makes up for in that department. Well, recently I hear Azure Lane story is actually getting better, but that's besides the point. And so that's why I always advocate for a story skip button in all gacha games. It should be industry standard. I mean, they were before fucking Genshin Impact came out. I've had people come into my stream or try to or leave comments in my videos being like, "Oh, but why would you want to skip gacha story? The developers worked so hard on it." Yeah, I worked hard to get to this point to spend money on their fucking gacha games so they can go fuck themselves. That's my fucking response, so you can go fuck yourself too. So yeah, part of the reason why I think all gacha games should have skip buttons. Like, no matter how good a gacha story is, FGO story has the best gacha story in the gacha scene. How many times did I say the word gacha in one sentence? And yet, even FGO has a skip button. So, what is MiHoYo's excuse exactly? Their stories are nowhere near fucking good as FGO's. They're not even the same, and they're not even the same fucking universe as FGO is. And yet Hoyo dares to not include a fucking skip button? I mean, it's endless they do. Even then, it's not even a full skip button. You still have to fucking click through some of the scenes, but at least it's not so bad. But in Star Rail and Genshin, where all those stories are for the most part, just fucking yap fest and maybe like 2 or 3 battles in between? Fucking ridiculous.
This section on presentation mainly covers the technicalities of the visuals, the UI, the smoothness of the player experience, and so on. Let's start with the framework that FGO was built on. Because of the initial cash grab nature of the game, the engine was hastily strung together and was slowly patched over time. Many of the UI and quality of life elements feel so outdated and so out of touch with modern standards, one might wonder why not just port it to a new engine. I used to play an online game called Gwent, back when the game was still alive. There was a major update called
Isn't this game the
revamped
Witcher game?
almost every aspect of the game. CD Projekt Red ported everyone's progress
Yeah,
to a
it
new
probably
game
is.
and continued development from there. Of course, the main gameplay loop was kept intact, but its framework for supporting the game was improved upon. I just gotta wonder, what's stopping Losango or Aniplex from doing the same? The game
Main reason is lack of manpower. We've had Los Angeles has put out like recruitment notices and shit like that. Basically, they don't have enough staff, as far as I understand it. That's also the reason why, I think I mentioned this in the last video, that's also the reason why I'm under the impression that that's the reason why FGO's content has also significantly slowed in the past, like, 2-3 years. It used to be for the first half, at least, of FGO's life cycle, or first, 6-7 years, that we would get a new event every 2 weeks. Events lasted 2 weeks, and we'd get, either back-to-back events, or maybe we'd have a week break and we'd go into another 2-week-long event or something like that. Some events were 3 weeks long, like for example, some of our summer events, or most of our summer events for that matter. But we used to have regular 2-week events. Nowadays, all of our events are at least 3 weeks long. I think on JP they've had events that have lasted longer than a fucking month. So 4-week plus events. And we'd be lucky if we get like back-to-back events. Maybe JP still gets some of those, but here in NA we certainly haven't gotten like a back-to-back event in a while. I don't think, outside of like maybe a rerun or two. Or maybe it's because we've had we've been working with Lost Belt 7's release for a while now. But I guess we'll see later on this year, because currently at the time of this video recording, our Valentine's event is about to end in a couple days, and we'll see if we jump straight into another event, or we have like a week or 2 long break before we go into another 3 week long fucking slog of an event. But my impression is, my understanding is that Los Angeles is suffering from staff shortages for the most part. Because remember that Los Angeles, the Los Angeles team had to separate from Delightworks, and Delightworks was a bigger company, so they probably had access to more resources and stuff. Whereas the team that separated from DW to form Los Angeles to keep working on FGO, they probably couldn't bring their entire team with them. Probably. It's also no secret that developer positions, unless you're like a senior, unless you hold like a senior position or anything like that, recruit developer positions don't exactly pay well. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Los Angeles been suffering from like staff shortages and shit like that. At least, again, that's how I understand it. Maybe I don't have the full picture. So full transparency, maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but that's how I see it.
consistently performs on the top charts, so budget is definitely not an issue. Once again, I need to reiterate that
one thing about the whole budget isn't an issue thing, aside from the whole Sony fucking steals all their money, FGO is such a cultural phenomenon, and it's been around for long enough, and the Fate IP has so much weight, at least in Japan anyway, that yeah, they just need to release one good character. They're one of those gacha games where all they need to do is release one good character, or like a character that the players, the fans have been looking forward to for a while, and that's all it takes to fucking catapult themselves back up to the top, up to the top again. That's literally it. It's like, it's not really because of anything else that they're doing for the most part.
It is up to the developers to address any issues with optimization and any technicalities. I cannot give any exceptions to FGO, simply because it wouldn't be fair to the other games I've reviewed on the channel. So the story of FGO is presented in a visual novel format, but for whatever reason, they never bothered to make more than 2 lines of dialogue show up at a time, so you have to be very selective on how the words are read, since
Yeah, my problem actually with the text box here is that the text scrolls by. I think you can actually control the text speed technically, but it still doesn't. It still makes reading it kind of uncomfortable. If you watch because I put up a playlist of me reading through Lost Belt 6, and I've read most of it on stream. I think I didn't read like the last like couple scenes or so because I got triggered from the last battle or something. You'll notice that I keep hitting the log button. You see right here where my cursor is, down at the bottom right. I keep having to hit the log button because the text scrolls by a little too fast for my liking, or at least it scrolls faster than I can talk. Because I talk on I like read the story out loud on stream. Even when I'm just reading it like in person, I'm not like reading out loud or anything. I frequently have to still hit this log button anyway to see what the fuck they just said. So yeah, this UI is definitely not very comfortable. I would imagine this is because obviously in original Japanese players obviously probably wouldn't have that big of an issue with it. Maybe they do. I don't know, but obviously, English and Japanese are a little bit different in terms of like, how visual novel friendly they are. I would imagine because, Japanese uses kanji and Chinese characters and hiragana and katakana and all that good stuff. They can probably convey entire meanings and names and stuff like that a lot faster. Well, unless they're trying to spell out a Western, like a foreign name, then in which case, they're good luck with that. But most of their like home Japanese names and home phrases and whatnot, just the Japanese language itself, I would imagine can fit much better in this tiny ass text box. Whereas English kind of needs a little more space, perhaps. I mean, hey, that fits Americans. So yeah,
since you can't scroll up
not great.
Unless you bring up the backlog to see what was said. It's weird because they have figured out how to do scalable text in some of the dialogue choices. There's absolutely no live 2D animation.
Yeah, they also sometimes do. They also put in like they sometimes put in like their own like custom text, I guess. But they only really do that to like as like part of like the storytelling experience. Like whenever you're tripping out or you're in like a memory or something serious is going down. Like maybe they'll have like fuzzy ass text or like text will get all janky and shit. But again, mainly for the experience, not really for user friendliness.
Here and. Parts of it can be forgiven since it wasn't so huge back then. Plus, I'm sure someone can argue that Live 2D goes against the spirit of FGO and ruins the original artwork.
Nah. Hard disagree. Whoever says that is fucking retarded. There are people, I've seen at least one Twitter artist or Twitter guy, somebody on Twitter anyway, take FGO Final Ascension art and then actually animate them using Live 2D, and they look really nice, even for even as a fan-made project. I think I've seen a Live 2D animated Saber. I think I've also seen one for I want to say Jalter. Like they look nice. It would be lovely if I would be all for like an overhaul project where La Zinga's like, all right, boys. Like, we're going to take the next 3 months to just overhaul all our Final Ascension art and make all of them Live 2D animated. They're never going to do that because the game probably can't even support it in the first place. But that would be really nice to see. Like, I don't... Who in their right mind who plays FGO would look at Live 2D Final Ascension arts and be like, no, that ruins the game. What the fuck kind of fake-ass player is that? Fucking tourist.
Another thing is that the original game engine was built for those older generations of phones where the display were less wide, and when it was time to port it over to the newer displays in the 2017-ish models, it took them like a year or so to migrate the display. Before that, you could still
since I noticed Pseychie plays FGO on his tablet, I also have FGO on my tablet too. And FGO still does not have an iPad, a tablet compatible screen. You will always have the weird fucking blue bars on the top and the bottom. To be fair, Nikkei isn't much better. I mean, they do have like a 16:9 aspect ratio for Nikkei if you want to play it on PC, which I would want to say a lot of us do. I certainly do. But like even that's not perfect because like skill burst animations are still shown in the phone aspect ratio, and like the rest of the screen is like all blacked out and shit. Even the combat is kind of affected by phone aspect ratio, but that I understand because you want to keep gameplay fair between phone and PC. So
download the game.
Nikkei is excusable though. FGO is not.
But it will have an ugly-looking border around it like this.
Yep.
When the display was ported over, the sprites retained their resolution, so if we blow it up on a big screen,
it looks
gets
like
pretty
shit.
pixelated. There's also no voice acting, despite the amount of revenue that gets pulled from this. It's really a shame, because some of the story moments are really good, and I think a lot of Fate fans would love to see these scenes come to life with voice performances. I guess they can save the budget for the anime adaptations, but...
Yeah. No, it would be nice if they went back and actually voiced the story, but... They're never. It's one of those things. It's just another one of those things where it's like, yeah, they're never gonna do that. And here's the worst part about it: if the devs ever get asked, oh, why don't you go back and voice the story? They're just gonna they can just pull out some bullshit excuse such as oh, we want to keep with tradition because FGO was never voiced in the first place, so we don't want to change that. All that fucking dog shit. I will say, however, that there is one exception, and it's during Valentine's events, kind of topical because we have the Valentine's event going on right now in NA, probably for JP too. But they did at least go through the effort of voicing our Valentine's event. Specifically because you can get Valentine's like gifts, you can give them to females, you can get them from guys, from all your male servants, so equal opportunity here. And they do voice every single character's Valentine's at least, and that's a commendable effort because the game has like 400 plus characters at this point, so they had to voice all of them. It didn't used to be that way. I think they only started voicing Valentine's events or Valentine's like gifts in those events starting like year 5, 6 onwards or something. It's a relatively recent development. I say relatively, but I think JP's had for a while now. But when they first started doing it, they did in fact go back and voice every single one of the old servants. So credit where credit is due, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I would also like to see them go back and voice the original in-game story, even the shittier chapters too. Even though we all dump on the first couple of Singularity chapters, I'd still like to hear them voice too. So yeah, I agree. Will they ever? But again, it's just one of those things where will they ever do it? No.
As of
Probably
currently,
not.
none of the Lost Belts have been adapted to anime yet. I know it's possible to add it since some scenes, including the Valentine stories with each servant, are fully voice acted. Unlike a silent visual novel, you can't really argue that it's more...
About Lost Belts, they probably won't do a Lost Belt anime just because they would consider that way too spoilery. The reason why I say that is because I don't know if Pseychie... I don't expect Pseychie to know this, but Aniplex... it's either Aniplex or Losangle themselves, but whoever made this policy, FGO has a very, very anti-content creator policy where, well, first of all, they don't even sponsor anybody, right? Unlike Hoyo or other gacha studios and developers, FGO sponsors nobody. With a few exceptions. However, if you do happen to get sponsored by FGO to play their game, like think the Hollow Girls, for example, some of the VTubers from Hololive, that is, Pekora and Ina come to mind. Also, some of the other FGO addicts like Fubuki and Anya, but I don't think they've done either of them have done. Well, Fubuki has done roll streams, but I don't think Anya's ever streamed FGO before. We know she plays, or at least used to play. Crony too, I guess. Now that I think about it. Anyways, Rauda too, actually too. FGO has this weird ass policy where their sponsored content creators cannot stream anything past Babylonia. if you want to stream FGO and you're being sponsored directly by the game or by Aniplex, Los Angeles, whoever, you cannot stream past Babylonia. You can only stream anything before that, and obviously they're gonna go for Camelot or Babylonia because those are two best Singularity chapters. That's it. That's literally it. That's why you never see. In case you guys wondered why Ina and Pecora from Hololive only ever streamed Camelot and or Babylonia, and they never did anything past that. That's why. They consider anything beyond Babylonia to be hella spoiler territory. What was the original point? I fucking lost my train of thought. All I was doing was oh yeah, that's right. Now that I see Melt here. Pseychie was talking about how it's kind of weird that none of the Lost Belts have like any animes yet. Yeah, that's probably like related to that. They would never do a Lost Belt anime because it would be way too fucking spoilery. So as much as I would like them to do, actually, do I even want them to do like an anime of Lost Belt 6? The anime adaptations weren't even that good. At least not from what I hear. I never watched it myself. Maybe I should watch Babylonia at least because it actually did get an anime. But like I think the Babylonia anime was okay. It's just the Camelot movie and the Babylonia anime just cut out a whole lot of content, and I fucking hate it when animes cut out content from like the original source material. I understand why they do it because they don't have as much time to cover the same amount of content, but still, it's like, then at least why not do a 24 episode season instead of just 12 like everybody else fucking does? Fucking greedy ass anime companies, or whatever the fuck.
Servant are fully voice acted.
So yeah, that's why I don't think there's ever gonna be a Lost Belt anime.
The different servants sound like, since they already do have voices. But hey, small indie company, am I right? Now, I've been an avid visual novel enjoyer for quite some time.
Small indie
I
studio.
understand the importance of writing clear and concise words, but also being very flowery with it. I have no doubt that Kino Kunas is a very skilled writer. A lot of the story is extremely captivating, filled with well-established characters and lore. Not to mention the faithful localization to English. I ultimately don't have any...
Faithful is being generous. It's not... no, I don't think... I don't really think... Most gacha games that get localized for English don't do a very good job of it. I'm sure one of the gacha games that I do play might have like legitimately good English localization. Honestly, FGO might be one of the better ones, to be honest. But even then, it's not perfect. It's got quite a few flaws. And whoever does their QA, it needs to be fucking fired. Cause while I was reading through Lost Belt 6, there were like at least like 10 or more, like at least a dozen different fucking typesetting errors or like punctuation errors or shit like that. Like, that's fucking embarrassing.
Problems with it, but I can't help but think that it could have been more. For example, let's compare this to Reverse 1999, which also does a visual novel style of storytelling. Not only is the main story and event stories fully voice acted, the character sprites are expressive and detailed, beautifully animated in live 2D and rendered cutscenes. The effort put into presenting something in a stylistic and unique way does take skill and talent. On a servant's profile, there are 3 different Ascension art, plus a special illustration for the 4th and final Ascension. However, it's quite clear that the newer and shinier 5 stars get the special treatment here, as their portrait arts change more dramatically, whereas the low rarities just kinda add a few details here and there. Technically, each servant comes with 3 skins, and for the newer units, they even have different sets of voice lines depending on which Ascension skin is applied. Something else I quite like when gacha games do this is special interactions between characters. When you level up the bond level of a servant, tapping on them in the lounge menu can sometimes trigger a line of dialogue regarding another servant if you have them in your roster. I like this. This is a very nice touch. It showcases that Chaldea is alive and the servants physically know each other, instead of only interacting.
Yeah, every character has at least like 5 or 6 different random voice lines that can trigger, and in addition to like just generic lines towards you, the master. Oh, Raiko nipples. And other things that they just talk about, like, oh, what do I like, what do I dislike, what would I do with the Grail, I think is one of the lines. But yeah, they also have like at least 5 or 6 lines. Some of the more well-connected characters, let's just put them that way, do have a lot more. Like for example, if you're a knight of the round table or you're like related to them, then yeah, we have quite a few knights of the round table. So yeah, they probably have a voice line for each and every one of them, probably.
Interacting with a player, making them the center of the universe. The music is also pretty good. I wouldn't say the game is known for it, but it's there. Though I wish there was a way to change the lobby music. There are skins that
Yeah, FGO's music is more orchestral. They definitely have a theme. A lot of gacha games have like an overarching music theme that they like doing. And it's usually orchestral. You can tell by how they do their the trailers and the commercial, their CMs, or I think that stands for like commercial messages or whatever. CMs, PVs, trailers, whatever you want to call it. So FGO's music is definitely orchestral, and yeah, I agree. I don't know FGO for its music per se, but it does have a few bangers. It does have a few bangers, like the Shimosa opening trailer theme, for example. I forgot the name of that. Heretics, yeah, that's right, Heretics. Was it Shimosa or was that Salem? I forget. Anyways, but yeah, Heretics is the name of that song. I think Heretics is probably one of the most famous FGO like theme songs that have come out. I don't really remember much else, though. I think that it has like a couple pretty famous ones. Heretics is the most well-known by far, though, I think. At least to me, that's the one that I remember. And it does have some bangers, like especially during seasonal events. They've got some good soundtracks, but yeah, for the most part, it's like either ambient music or like it's like intended to set the stage. So even if it does have good music, they're mostly reserved for like the story. So you remember the stories, but not necessarily the music itself.
Get introduced, but they are not paywalled. You trade for it using in-game materials and some QP. You cannot pay money for a skin in this game. Some give unique voice lines, but some are just small changes to the character sprites, which is still better than nothing. So that's the pleasantries out of the way, because for the next 10 minutes or so,
we're gonna shit on this game! My favorite.
Typically in a gacha game, when you want to upgrade a character, you go to the character menu. You select the character you want, then you make all the upgrades from there.
Oh
in FGO,
boy.
though, this is a bit different. There's a tab called Spirit Origins where you can see your roster, but bringing up a servant's details page, you can't actually do any upgrades from here.
Yep.
Even long tapping
you have
on
to
the
go
skills
to
button
enhance and
doesn't bring
go
you
to
the
the
page.
specific character
There is a
enhance
separate
the servant tab.
that you
I
have
think
to
it
go
is.
to instead called Enhance, where you have to individually decide if you want to level up a servant, the skills, the CEs, command codes, limit breaks, and grailing. Why do all these menus exist instead of a central area to do all of them? I don't know. We'll start from the top of the pile.
Old school
When
gacha
leveling a
games,
servant
that's
or
fucking
CE,
why.
You'll need embers or other CEs that act as XP. As mentioned previously, you have to physically select which embers to use, as some give more XP than others, and you can't use more than 20 at once. You then have to watch a cutscene of the embers being used, and even if you skip it, you have to watch the level gauge go up and the servant saying their level up line. I would really appreciate a way to skip this entirely, since the majority of gacha games these days don't have this problem.
So another understandable concern by Pseychie. Again, he grew up with that's a crazy thing to say. He comes from a Genshin ass background. So yeah, Genshin doesn't deal with this. However, while I understand where he's coming from, I can explain why this happens for FGO specifically. This whole shit. When you enhance characters in this game, there's a small chance that they get double or even triple the amount of XP that you originally gave them. Those are called super and great successes, or we just call them super or great sucks for short, because haha, we're immature. I mean, Genshin technically has something similar, because when you upgrade artifacts, you have a small chance of getting like a 2x or even a 5x, I believe, multiplier on the amount of XP you give to your artifacts. So a little bit surprised Pseychie didn't bring that up, but hey, it's easy to forget. That's why you have to go through all this bullshit for FGO. Personally, I think this screen is fine, where you see the XP bar on your servant go up physically, and it says, oh, level limit reached, or servant level enhanced. I think this screen is fine because of the chance that you might get of getting double or even triple your original amount of XP that you gave them. It's especially useful when you're trying to fucking level 120 a servant, that's for sure. And not only that, but unlike most other, especially new age gacha games, when you increase a servant's level in FGO by any amount, even if it's just by one level, has to be at least one level though, or you'd have to take them to at least a new level. They will give you an exclusive line the older servants only have one line, but the new ones have like two or more. Where it's like, oh yeah, it's some flavor of like, oh, thanks for giving me embers or something like that, or oh, I got stronger, that sort of thing, So they actually do have a voice line for getting enhanced, which, to be fair, most gacha games don't do that anymore. So this screen is okay. However, I will agree with Pseychie that
you have to watch
specifically this menu does not need to be here. Like, we get it. It's like a fancy ass fucking graphic of your servant fucking eating embers, but like, once you've seen it for the first couple of times, it kind of gets annoying. This screen, I think you should just skip entirely. And then this screen should stay, but maybe once you've heard their enhancement voice lines a couple times, then it's like, okay, yeah, sure, just like fucking like double tap and you just skip this shit entirely.
Since the majority of gacha games these days, Ambers, except this quick select feature this entirely, since the majority of gacha games these days don't have this problem. The quick select feature is there if you want to automatically filter and select Ambers, except this feature is not there for CEs.
Yep.
It's not so bad if
you have to individually include CEs. Let me get to that part. So, this is part of the reason why craft essences are so fucking annoying this game, and why people don't want to roll friend points, is because of this shit right here. Making craft essence bombs is very important if you actually care to play this game at like more than just a casual level. Like I said earlier in my last video, the first part of my review video, leveling up 5-star craft essences, the ones you use a lot anyway, is very important because they give you a lot more stats. The attack stats are what you're looking for because the higher a servant's attack is, the more damage they do. And with how FGO handles like attack buffs and damage buffs, even giving them a little bit more attack could be the difference between them being able to kill an enemy or not. And 5-star craft essences, again, like I said earlier, like I said in the last video, can give anywhere between 2,000 to 2,400 extra attack at their max level at 100, and that is a huge amount of attack to be giving to a servant, especially if they're a DPS servant. The problem is getting there. If you play FGO long enough, you'll eventually understand that, yeah, maybe you should work on, like, leveling up your craft essences. The issue is that it takes so fucking long to do for most people. Because, again, like Pseychie said, you can only select 20 craft essences at once. You can only feed them you can only feed them in batches of 20 because of the whole fucking super suck, great suck bullshit. It's nice, but, like, what would be even nicer is if you could go through that shit faster. So it takes a long-ass time that most people just don't want to fucking slog through. Not even FGO players want to do this shit. I can excuse, Hoyo players, like Pseychie, of not liking this, because, yeah, this shit is a fucking drag. But even FGO players don't want to fucking do this if they don't have to. I don't want to do this either, but I do it anyway because I'm already used to it. I mean, look at any one of my FGO Whales logs and see how many goddamn max level 5-star craft essences I have. Like, I'm no stranger to this. I fucking hate it, but I do it anyway because I know that's good for my account. So, yeah, this is a doozy. And yeah, I agree. There should be a much more streamlined version of doing this shit. Otherwise, this is nothing but a giant ass time sink that the game, if you want to take it seriously, almost forces you to do.
Except this feature is not there for CEs. It's not so bad if you're just leveling a unit normally, but when you need a lot of embers for grilling, it's mind-numbingly tedious.
Mm-hmm. And in other games, you have it so fucking good. Look at that. 2 clicks and you're fucking done. Click and drag. He didn't even get the last one. That is a very common thing because when you try to click and drag or tap and drag shit in your inventory, the game can only, I think, select 5 items at a time. It does it rapidly, but think of it as like basically tick rate if you play like Counter-Strike or something. It can only like absorb like a certain number of items, or it can only detect that you're trying to like select drag a certain number of items. So if you drag too fast, then you and you let go of your tablet or whatever, the game will not actually select 20 items. So you have to go back and click drag again. So trash. Yeah, count the seconds. I will say, this graphic is nice the first couple times you see it, like I said earlier. I just think that in order to compromise on the situation, the game should put in like a setting where you can turn it on or off, where it's like, oh, do you want to see enhancement animations? If not, click this button to disable it or whatever. Or like to enable it, however they want to do it. So yeah, so that way it doesn't take it out of the game completely, because it does have its own charm the first couple times you see it. But then once you're over it, it's like, yeah, I get the point. Then yeah, you shouldn't have to fucking see it over and over and over and over again. Whee!
Oh, that's real nice.
Now onto skills. When FGO was at its infancy stages, the skill descriptions were relatively simple.
Now we're getting to this one.
9 years later, servant kits have become a bit more complicated. Due to the spaghetti code, the game cannot change the skill description when it's level, and there's no way to implement keywords or side menus to absorb the text, making some of them extremely cluttered and unintuitive.
One of the great memes that we got out of this is there are some skills, at least in the beginning, they probably don't do this anymore, but there were some skills whose descriptions were nothing. They literally read apply random effects. That is it. This
For
game,
example,
man.
if you take a look at Calamity Jane's skill here, yeah, the skill itself is pretty interesting. It basically does things depending on the number of crit stars you have, making you build a crit or stars-oriented team. Except, players are greeted with a giant wall of text. Usually, when games introduce complex mechanics, they use keywords or bolded text to strip down
make
on
it easier
information
to
and make it
digest.
easy to digest. Due
Hey,
to the shoestring engine of FGO, this is not possible. Let's take a look at an infamous skill called Imperial Privilege.
Is this the random effects
what
one?
the skill actually upgrades, the in-game text will simply say that there is a chance to trigger an attack or
this
defense
is
buff and a healing
the increased
effect.
one, or the
Okay,
apply random
so
effects
what
one.
is the chance?
60%.
The level does go up, but nothing about the description changes. So my question is, what is being upgraded?
Yeah, what's being upgraded here? It's not the chance. Imperial Privilege it's a skill that a lot of like king type or king trait, king or emperor trait servants have. Romulus is what, the first king of Rome, I think. So yeah, it's natural he has this. Other servants like Wu Zetian, assassin, she doesn't have it in her caster form, but assassin Wu Zetian has imperial privilege. Nero has imperial privilege. This skill is 60% chance to get anywhere from a 20 to 40% attack and defense buff. Both the attack and defense buffs are RNG. They are both subject to the 60% chance. So you can either get both, you can get one, or you can get neither if the game absolutely fucking hates you. The only thing that's guaranteed is the HP. Yes, it's that fucking stupid.
And by how much?
And guess what? When you need the attack buff, guess what the game does? Doesn't give you it.
How is a new player supposed to know which skills to prioritize? And I can already hear the veteran FGO players shouting at their screens. Use the wiki, it's not a big deal.
Not just that. When you play FGO enough, you'll know that some skills require prioritization than others. The absolute highest priority for skills is anything that provides a what we call a battery. You've heard me use that phrase before. Batteries are what we refer to when we talk about skills that have charge on them. Like it gives a servant or their allies like a certain amount of MP gauge. We call that charge, or we call those types of skills batteries. Given how critical MPs are to the game, to playing the game, charge skills are among the most important skills in the game. Probably the single most important one. So typically, if you see a new servant that has a charge skill, you probably want to level that one first. Followed by Probably attack buffs. Yeah, probably like anything that increases their damage, because more damage is always fun.
And my response is, do you really think it's up to modern gaming standards to hide critical information from players and ask them to look it up on a wiki? If we take a look
Nope.
at what this actually upgrades, there is a base 60% chance for either the attack or defense buff to proc, and the amount actually caps out at 44% each.
When I mentioned Imperial Privilege, I was thinking Imperial Privilege A. Something that Pseychie probably will not mention here, unless he surprises me later, is that back in the day with FGO, they used to design servants. Let me take a step back here. Because of how lore addicted FGO was, and still is, a lot of skill design in this game, were basically based on like variations of like base skills. So you notice how skill names here have EX, right? I don't know if he showed other skills. I'm pretty sure he did. I don't know where to jump back to show that though. I don't want to lose my spot in the video because this video is kind of long. Speaking of long videos, this video is already over 2.5 hours long. But back to this. EX, the EX part here is like the rank. For those of you who aren't familiar with Fate, those of you who are familiar with Fate will know what this is. But those of you who aren't, in universe, servants have skills that have a particular rank to them, and that rank determines how strong or it's like a description of how strong their skill, their particular version of a skill is. I mentioned earlier that Imperial Privilege is a skill that's shared, or multiple servants have, and typically they're like king or emperor style servants, right? And they typically have this skill. Nero, Romulus, Wuzetian Assassin, and among others. This rank, however, changes depending on the servant. Oh, almost knocked over my can of Arizona tea. This changes. I forget who has EX. Nero probably has EX. I think Romulus only has Imperial IPA, Imperial Privilege A. I think Wuzetian also has A rank. Ozymandias also has Imperial Privilege too, now that I think about it. I think he also has only A too. Anyways, I'm getting off tangent here. The EX ranking has a physical gameplay effect, because you'll notice that it scales from 22 to 44%, and the healing scales from 1200 to 3400. The higher the rank this is, the better the numbers. The lower the rank, the lower the numbers. So you can have servants, even among 5 stars, who have like variations of the same skill, and some are just arbitrarily lower than others just because FGO is trying to be lore accurate. So the reason why I said 20 to 40% was because I was thinking of Imperial Privilege A, whereas the EX version of the skill is a little bit better. That's how they used to balance this game. Thankfully, they don't do this anymore, or at least not as much. Nowhere near as much, actually. Assuming they still do. These days, La Zingle has realized that, yeah, this method of, like, skill design where it's based on fucking rank, how good their skills are is based on fucking rank, like Charisma E. God, that was such a fucking joke. Thankfully, they don't do that anymore because they've realized that that's dog shit game design. Yeah, thankfully, they don't do that anymore. And thankfully, they've also gone out of the way to give at least some of those servants that got screwed with like low ranking skills, like buffing those skills so they go up to par with other ones. Like, for example, 4-star Gawain from Camelot, male Gawain, not Barghest. He used to have a charisma skill at rank E, which is only it only scales from like 6 to 12% attack buff for your entire team. The standard charisma, any skill that increases a team's attack, the whole team's attack by 10 to 20% is what I refer to as a charisma skill, because that's how that's what most of our charisma skills used to be like. But for whatever reason, some of our characters, some servers just had Charisma E, which is by far the worst version. It's only normally it's 10 to 20% or somewhere around that. Like Saber had Charisma B or something, and that gave like 8 point something to like 18 or 19 point something, maybe a little lower than that actually, like 17 point something. But Charisma E, 6 to 12%. Take it or leave it. And so Gawain, he eventually got a buff where, yeah, his charisma got buffed to something a little bit better, where, yeah, they fixed his scaling, so it's now a proper 10 to 20%. It got standardized like that. But old school FGO game design, this is what I'm talking about when I said earlier in the last video that year one, in the early years of the game, the devs didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Fucking stupid ass game design, bro. Again, thankfully, they don't really do this anymore. All the skills that come out are unique to each servant. And if they do have like a skill that's kind of like based on or a variation of a skill or the same skill just with a different rank, it's usually, you know, acceptable, usually. But yeah, just another fucking oddity of this fucking
or
game.
defense buff to proc, and the amount actually caps out at 44% each. This would have been very nice to know in-game, such as those skills that increase the NP gauge, sometimes known as battery skills. It doesn't actually show how much of it gets filled, so again, you literally have to look it up. This is quite frustrating, since if I knew how much of the gauge would get filled up, my plays might have been different.
It would absolutely be, yeah, because how dependent the gameplay is on MPs. Yeah, that's why battery skills are so fucking important, or so fucking crucial to the gameplay of this game. Because if you're in a challenge quest, you need a certain servant's MP, like right the fuck now, because you know, you need a servant's defensive NP to help your team tank an incoming enemy NP, right? Otherwise, it's gonna team wipe you. And you didn't, and your servant has the servant you need to get their MP for has a battery, but you didn't know how much charge it gave you. It's like, well, okay, what the fuck do I do then? You know, I mean, obviously you're gonna use it because it's either you use it and find out how much gauge you have, or you know, you just die. But outside of those like life or death situations, you know, it'd be nice to know how much battery your characters have, or how much battery your servants can give themselves, in order to determine like, okay, what do I want to do from here? FGO is definitely one of those games where it's like, yeah, every decision you make affects how, you know, well, I mean, this applies to everything, but especially in FGO, it's like when you fail a fight, it's like you might sometimes think back and be like, oh man, if I just done this differently on this turn, I could have beaten this, or, you know, blah blah blah, something like that. And with how critical skill information is, and the fact that the game doesn't tell you shit, it's like, yeah, of course Pseychie would bring this up as a fucking concern. He absolutely should.
Part of me wants to say that it's a game engine limitation, but they are able to show the numbers on append skills.
This is what I was talking about earlier. The whole fucking append shit. The reason why they can say they can do this, tell you the exact numbers for appends, because the first two, at least, the third one is not so universal, but the first two definitely are. The first two append skills that all servants have are universal across everybody. The first A1 is just an extra attack boost, and A2 is just a small amount of mana or small amount of NP gauge that servants start with, like a one-time 10 to 20% NP gauge boost that they just start with. Very useful. But that's why they can list numbers here, because they don't want to do that for anybody else. I don't think it's a limit. It's an engine limitation. It's just FGO being lazy.
Something else FGO does is traits. But this can get a little confusing because there are actually three types of these. There is alignment, which is
this fucking cesspool.
It's kind of like the moral standings of a certain character, such as lawful good, neutral balance, or chaotic evil. The alignment of a servant is displayed in the profile section in the menu. There are also attributes, and all servants will be assigned one. They're either man, earth, sky, star, or beast. In fact, there are actually hidden attribute advantages, but they're generally not considered since the change is so little.
That is not true. Oh boy, this is a doozy. On the surface, it might not seem like a lot. It really doesn't. And I don't blame FGO players who either don't know the game or haven't been playing for long enough to know that. No, they absolutely influence your gameplay. Let me put it this way. Let me go back to the attribute chart here. Remember last video how I talked about how classes have like hidden damage multipliers, like how Avengers, Rulers, and Berserkers all have an extra 10% damage multiplier just because they're Avengers, Rulers, and Berserkers, right? Well, there's also another RNG mechanic where any amount of damage your characters do. This also applies to enemies, by the way. It's a global thing. Any amount of damage that is done to any entity has its own 10% RNG damage window. You can do the game. What the game does is how I think it does it is that it calculates how much damage a servant would do normally, and then it creates a 10% damage window back and forward, or that's a weird way of putting it. It creates a damage threshold where you can do either 10% less damage than you're supposed to, or 10% more damage than you're supposed to. Yeah, I think you should know where I'm trying to get at with this here. If you combine all these things together, right? Class damage modifier in like built-in class damage modifiers, attribute damage modifiers, the random fucking global 10% damage window where you can either do 10% less or more damage in either direction. Then it gets pretty noticeable. For those of you who don't play FGO, enemies can have sometimes. I mean, if you play games like Star Rail and Genshin and shit, you might hear this hero I'm about to say like, oh, like, well, how's that? You know, whatever, bro. Right? We have bosses with millions of HP here too, right? But FGO also has bosses that have sometimes quite literally millions of HP, like a fat fucking HP pool. Or even if they don't have that much, they still have HP values in like the hundreds of thousands a lot of the time. Attack buffs or the way that attack buffs are calculated in FGO, make it so that they basically amplify the amount of damage that a servant can do, right? It's why your own servants only have like at most tens of thousands of health or attack percent or attack stat rather, flat attack, base attack, sorry, not flat attack. And they can put out like fucking millions of points of damage when fighting. Because of that, buffs and like damage ranges such as these, even if it's only 10%, normally you think that you hear a 10% buff and like, oh, that's not a lot, like, right? Like how much of a difference can it make? No, it can be the difference between you beating a fight and losing one. And nowhere more relevant is it than in farming runs, right? Remember, I mean, Pseychie said it himself, 3-turn farming is very important in this game because it's how you min-max your time in this game. It's how you min-max how much time you have to spend fucking farming in this game so you can fuck off and do something else. Event farming nodes can sometimes have bosses that have a lot of HP. Well, not sometimes. They always have bosses that have a shit ton of HP. And so we, at least the nerdier, us whale-ass farmers at least, we hunker down. Or I say we, but I just use that term just very loosely. We hunker down and we spreadsheet that shit out. We math nerd the fuck out of that shit to come up with, okay, who is the best servant that we can use? Or at least who are our options? Right? And we take literally everything into account. Attributes, obviously class advantage, of course. Trait advantage, super effective damage mods, power mods, all that bullshit. To figure out, okay, what can we use here? What are our options? Who is our best options? Who are our second best options? If you don't have those, who else can we use? Right? What is our setup? What light cones are we running here? Light cones. There I go using Star Rail terms again. I have Star Rail streams up on my side monitors here, so that's why. What kind of craft essences are we using here? So, no. Again, I don't blame Pseychie for not knowing how impactful attribute advantage is here, because to be fair, most of the time people aren't gonna fucking notice this. But yeah, it comes into play more than you think, and just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So, just a quick correction on him on that one.
The hidden attribute advantages, but they're generally not considered since the change is so little. Attributes are not to be confused with traits, which are things that describe the character, such as humanoid, super large, divine, and so on. There are a number of skills or NPs that specifically target one of these niches, like Ashia Dolman's ability to buff
And we call them
chaotic
super
evil
effective
allies,
mods, like I said.
or David dealing more damage to enemies with the giant trait, since, you know, David and Goliath. It makes sense from a lore perspective, and it's a cool concept. My only question is, here's an
How
enemy
do you
on the
tell?
field.
Yeah, how do you
How
tell?
do I check what traits they have?
You can't tell. You can't tell in game. You have to look it up, or you just have to know yourself.
What about servants? It does show their alignment chart in the profile,
But it doesn't tell
what
you
about
in
their
game.
other traits? Summer Brynhilder has a skill that grants buffs to allies with the trait Loved Ones.
But who
Okay,
are they?
What is that? Can I see a servant has that in the roster?
Nope.
How would I know which allies to bring if I don't know if they have this trait? Internally, this trait is known as Brynhilder's Beloved, and it is tagged onto a handful of servants. Okay, so if I see that Bedivere here is tagged with it, then how would I know in-game that he has the trait?
You don't.
It doesn't list
That's
it
the good
anywhere
part.
on
That's the fun
profile
part.
page. What about Berserker Ku Hulain? His profile has the alignment of chaotic evil, vastly different than Bedivere's lawful good. The alter ego
Brynhilda's beloved, for just to nerd out about Brynhilda's lore a little bit. Brynhilda's beloved is a reference to her lore, I think. They just adapted it for FGO's gameplay. It's basically in game how it works is any servant who has Brynhilda's beloved, the trait that is, basically means that they are a servant that Brynhilda would fall in love with, or she considers them worthy enough. Because remember, Brynhilda is a Valkyrie, so, and you know the whole point of Valkyries in Norse lore is that they're supposed to choose like strong humans and bring them back to Valhalla or some shit. So that's kind of that's basically that whole legend just weaponized in FGO.
Kita Alter
Something
has
like
the
that.
Loved One trait, but the Summer version does not. Let's take a look at another trait. The servant
Weird
Gilgamesh
shit.
has the special damage modifier to servants, as the game suggests, with the exclusion of those with the power of the star.
Let me go into more nerdy ass detail about this one. Specifically, super effective mod is the weak against Enuma Elish super effective mod. In lore, Gilgamesh is supposed to have an advantage over almost every servant because most servants use like weapons and shit, right? And so Gilgamesh being the, having his whole fucking Gate of Babylon shit, his Gate of Babylon is supposed to have the prototype to every weapon that ever existed, or something like that. And so logically, in the Nasuverse anyway, he is supposed to be a hard counter to almost every servant that exists. The exceptions, however, are what in-game, I guess, is described as the power of the star. There's one special attribute in the game called Star. Most servants are man, earth, or sky. But there are also a couple weird ones like Beast and Star. I think those are the two weird ones. Star attribute is given exclusively to servants who have changed the course of history, or changed the course of human history specifically. So Star is given to servants like Joan of Arc, or Jeanne d'Arc. I believe Da Vinci has it too. Da Vinci... I believe Saber Shiki has it too, but in her case, she has Star not because she changes the course of history, but because she's such a weird fucking character in universe that Gilgamesh doesn't really his Enuma Elish doesn't apply, if that makes any sense. Basically things that Enuma Elish cannot comprehend, or his MP just cannot comprehend, or that they weren't designed to be a counter for, he doesn't have the prototype to. Something like that. Isn't the Nasuverse fun? This is bullshit lore.
Power of the star. The idea here is that as the King of Heroes, he has access to the Vault of Babylon, being able to recreate the powers and weapons of every servant in the existence. So naturally, one can assume that when up against another servant enemy, aside from those with the star attribute, Gilgamesh's NP will do more damage. Okay, so if I bring up the list of the star attribute servants, can I assume that this roster is immune to Anima Elish? Again, I need to bring up the wiki for this since you can't actually see a servant's attributes in-game. And before you comment this, I'm already 2 steps ahead of you because I know that this new year on JP 20...
Already 2 steps ahead of you. Yeah, careful. Sorry, I didn't know I was listening to Mr. Pokey. What, are you gonna call yourself an Eastern Gacha content creator too, Pseychie?
24, there was an update to include the attributes of a servant in its profile, making the in-game descriptions more accurate. It only took them 8 years, and this change will grace the NA servers surely in 2026. To answer the previous
They could
question,
technically bring
no,
that earlier,
not
but
all
yeah.
the star attribute servants are immune. In fact, there
Point
is
taken.
a special list of characters with immunity instead. Most of them are star attribute, but there are also some wildly inconsistent cases. For example, Romulus, the hero that founded the Roman Empire, is immune, but the Lancer version, Romulus Quirinus, is not. Regardless of the explanations, because I'm sure
Yeah, some bullshit lore stuff.
a Fate fan can confirmation bias their way out of this one. The issue here is that except for the vague term power of the stars, there's no way to confirm in-game if a servant is immune to this. So when you're out in the game planning out a stage, you can't just tap on the enemy's portraits to see their traits. You have to exit the game app, check the enemy lineup on a wiki and say, oh, this enemy has a certain trait, let me bring the appropriate attacker. How much does this charge up my MP gauge again? Alright, gotta look this one up too. Oh, okay, so I got enough to MP this turn so I can actually make this play. Oh wait, does that soldier have the human or humanoid trait? Does that Treant have the giant or the super large trait?
My favorite trait in FGO or my 2 favorite ones, not because they're my actual favorite, but because of how bullshit they are, is the human and the humanoid trait. If you didn't know any better, you would look at that and be like, okay, so what's the difference between the two? Well, I'll tell you. Humanoid refers to anything that resembles human, right? Sounds pretty reasonable. So that applies to almost every servant. I think there are some servants that don't have it because they're like fucking weird. Like I think maybe some foreigners might not have it. I'm pretty sure there are some servants that literally don't have the humanoid trait. Most of them do though. But what about the human trait, right? Well, that trait refers to actual living humans, or at least that was the original definition. I think we actually do have a living human trait now. The regular human trait is no servant has it. The reason for that is because technically speaking, servants aren't alive, right? Servants that you summon in the Nazuverse, they're just projections of like their original copies or some shit. They're not exactly human, if that makes any sense. They're humanoid, but not human. So almost all servants are not human, if any at all. The ones who are like actual living humans, they actually have their own separate tag called living human or some shit like that. That applies to a lot of the welfares, I think. Oh, the welfare servants. But yeah, it's hilarious because I think there are some servants who actually have super effective mods or like power mods against human enemies specifically, which means you're never using that against a servant. You're only really using it against like enemy human like human NPC enemies or some shit like that. That's all it really says. I think there's a 2-star assassin named Charles Sanson or something like that. He's like a French Revolution guy. And he's like supposed to be like a doctor or like an executioner type thing. And I think one of his skills is literally he does more damage against human, so he's never using that against a servant, I think.
Trait. It doesn't take a genius to figure out this is not a good player experience.
It
You
is
have a lot
not,
of
yeah,
traits
no.
in the game, that's totally fine, but some of the times it's vague and misleading. For example, for the human and humanoid traits, as mentioned previously, encompasses those that are humans and those
There
that
we
look
go.
human respectively. However, the human trait is only reserved for those enemies that are actually humans, but there are no servants in the game with that
Exactly.
trait.
That is the exact reason why. Human only applies to like just generic enemies that you fight throughout like the Lost Belts and the Singularities. It does not apply to any servant at all.
Meanwhile, humanoid includes the vast majority of servants and a much wider array of enemies, and you can easily argue that all humans are also humanoid. Now look, The trait system is cool, like you can expand out to a lot of niches and for team building and character designs. The issue here is that the game does not give you enough information on the intricacies of them. And
Yeah. Trait attribute and trait abusing, or abusing traits and attribute advantages, is very important for if you want to min-max FGO. Now, not to say that I say min-maxing, so it's like, oh, you hear min-maxing, oh, so it's only for tryhards. Not actually in FGO's case. In most gacha games, you can get away with not really knowing what the fuck you're doing. You just need to have a good grasp of like, okay, these are the basics of the game, and as long as you get good at those, you can actually just, that's usually enough, right? Like, recently I was streaming Deadass, or the Deadly Assault game mode in Zenless, right? And I had some dipshit come to my stream to be like, oh, you're actually so bad at Zenless. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'm glad you can play this game at a professional level, if anybody cares. But even if I am bad at Zenless, and sure, if you think I'm bad at Zenless, that's fine. I don't really give a shit. But hey, I can 9-star Deadass and, 30-star, 36-star, or just basically full clear Shiu defense. If I can do that and still be bad at the game, okay, so be it. I don't mind being called bad. If that's what being bad is to you, and I'm still getting all the rewards for an endgame modes in a game like Zenless, sure, whatever. Call me bad all as much as you want. Do you think I give a shit? Not really. I'll just call you a dumbass and move on with my life and never think about you ever again. Well, outside of this moment anyway. But in FGO, that's not how this game works. This game, the more you know, the more it will directly impact your performance in this game. It's gotten easier over the years because, meta's support servants make it much easier just like not really know what the fuck you're doing. Just, as long as you know that, oh, if I give this servant their NP and they do it 3 times, then everything's dead, right? Usually that's good enough, but you can't really get away with that in challenge quests. Well, some challenge quests you can cheese, but not all of them at least. And if you want to get those challenge quests done, and most of the time you'd want to because they do give you like stuff like crystallized lores and even some tickets from time to time. Yeah, it helps to know what the fuck you're doing. But in order to know what you're doing, it kind of helps if the game told you, right? So you know what to expect, right? In other new gacha games, like, well, if you don't know how a character plays, it's not exactly the game's fault because the game told you. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe it can't show you exactly how to play a character, but like the point is that you use them, you trying to figure out how they play. Star Rail players can't figure out how to play Aglaya apparently. So that's on them for being so fucking retarded. But in FGO, if you don't know how to play this game, I don't blame you, because the game doesn't fucking tell you anything at all. It doesn't tell you any of these things either. I mean, it does, but it doesn't tell you what their values are in game. Like, when you're in the middle of a fight, you can't just leave to look up, to look at their fucking in-game profile and be like, oh, they have this trait. This game, FGO in-game, doesn't even tell you, enemy attributes at all or anything. It doesn't even have, an enemy, a gallery or a glossary at all. Right, when I would say a lot of games these days, a lot of gacha games these days also provide you oh, do you want to look up some of the enemies in the game? Sure, you can do that. I know Star Rail does that. I think Genshin might do that. I'm pretty sure the big gacha games, the big Hoyo and Wuwa games do that. That's a weird way to say that. All the big Hoyo games and Wuwa do that, right? Along with other gacha games as well. So it's yeah, FGO doesn't tell you shit. is
unless
the bottom
you
line.
again look it up on an external wiki, you can't get a full grasp of the system. Let's take a look at the in-game UI now. When you change
last comment about the you can't get a good grasp on the whole system thing. Yeah, no. FGO has so many obscurities, so many hidden mechanics that actually impact your gameplay that no, I would go so far as to say that if you are not involved with the community, and if you're not a fucking genius, like I said earlier, there is no way for you to know how to properly learn how to play this game. There is just no way. It is literally almost impossible, just straight out impossible, or damn near impossible. Your average Hoyotard, you give FGO, or you give FGO to your average Hoyotard, they're not gonna know shit about what the fuck they're doing. Right? If you tell them, oh, you can't look up any guides, you can't, go on Discord and ask for help, right? You can't go on Twitter and ask for help either. No social media, no nothing, just play the game, right? How long do you think it's going to take to figure out what the fuck they're doing? You know, a week? A month? A year? Several years? Literally, who knows? Is what I want to say. Literally, who the fuck knows? The only reason why I know as much as I do about this game is because, one, well, not the only reason, only reasons, plural, is that this is my first Gacha game, so obviously FGO still has a special place in my heart despite all the trash I talk about it. And two, I decided to autistically research this game. I mean, this game actually is the reason why I downloaded Discord in the first place. Right, to make a fucking Discord account so that I could talk to people online on the official, you know, subreddit Discord server for FGO and talk with other people about this game. Mainly to flex my account and then realize, oh wait, there's a lot of bigger fish out there, in terms of like whaling. But hey, I'm still glad I did because I met a lot of cool people on there. Right. I even joined like a whale-only Discord where I get all the nerdy shit from anyway, and it's thanks to people like them and other like people we would call theory crafters. We call them TCers in like the Hoyo communities and whatnot. But the smart boys, as I like to call them, the people who dig into the game, dig up the files, and analyze them, right? So that and it shares them, or at least, you know, we have access to them through connections and whatnot, and because we know where to look. And we learn these things, like these specific numbers. Like, how do you think I knew, and I know all the fucking numbers, or most of the numbers for all the minute fucking details for all these things, for like the game's basic mechanics that you know, Pseychie went over during the first third of his video? Because I fucking did the research. But that amount of research is unreasonable to demand out of your average gacha player. Gacha games are supposed to be casual, right? And while I do, you know, bemoan the fact that most gacha players are fucking retarded, I don't blame them. Gacha games are supposed to be, again, casual. You're not supposed to fucking nerd the shit nerd the fuck out of them. They're supposed to be games that you just kick back, pull up on your phone, you know, enjoy some jiggling anime titties or ass, right, and have a fun time playing them. Like nerding out over them, if you want to do it, that's fine, but it should be optional, I think the main point that I want to make. As long as a game is intuitive enough where you don't have to fucking, you know, put on your nerd glasses, look up a couple forums, and join a couple different, you know, game Discord servers just to figure out what the fuck you're doing, right? I think that's okay. I think that's fine. Like as long as it's just an option for you to do, if in case you are so interested, but it shouldn't be mandatory. But in FGO, it basically teeters either on the border of mandatory. It's or it already has like 2 feet in the door. So yeah, I totally agree. The way you fucking learn how to play this game is dog shit.
Chain together your cards, there will be a display below to let you know of the effects of the chain. So if you use arts as the lead card, then every subsequent card will have a NP gain effect. So, if I was a new player learning the ropes, if I tried chaining together a buster chain like this with the NP card as the third and final one,
so he does know.
Since the lead card is a buster card and the chain itself is a buster chain, then it's expected that the last card in the chain will get a significant damage boost. In fact, I expect the NP to do different amounts of damage if it was placed on the front or back side of the chain.
Yeah, it's the same clip from before.
Regardless of what the correct answer may be, if I try chaining it like this, the game's UI will tell me that the NP will get an attack ++. So as a beginner, it shouldn't be unreasonable to assume that that's what it does, right? Here's something else. If you select a lead card of a certain type, all your other cards will softly glow in the type's respective color, just to indicate the bonuses that the first card provides. So if you tap on a buster card, all your cards will glow red, hinting that they will receive the effects of the first card, giving a slight attack up. And the same applies to quick or arts. But here's something interesting. If you try to lead with a certain card type, even the NP cards will glow in that color. So again, if I was a new player and I see that my buster NP is glowing blue since I have an arts lead card, it would be expected that since I'm leading with arts, then the buster NP will also have an NP gain effect, right? No, that's not how it works. NP cards work a bit differently from face cards. They are not affected by the first card bonus. They can generally be used as the lead card themselves, but there's obviously going to be some nuances here where you could place it further down. In this case specifically,
As I already
using it
explained
in a chain like
in the
this
first
will
video.
not increase that servant's MP meter. The game UI is misleading you with false information. In case you're wondering, this is still happening on the JP servers 9 years later. When I see stuff like this, I gotta ask Lasango and Aniplex, what are you doing? How is something like this still in the game? There's no reason for the game to indicate it will do something, but not actually do that thing. When you enter each level, it will expand
Just one of
the
those things you
respective
gotta
amount
know.
of AP points. Of course, this is nothing new in gacha games, except if you lose or decide to quit out, the AP is still expended. So if you accidentally tapped on a Nero instead of your usual caster friend support, or didn't know how difficult the encounter could be, from the perspective of FGO, that sounds like a you problem. Typically in other gachas, the reason
Yep, we've had to deal with that for God knows how long. When in most gacha games these days, if you enter a battle but you decide, oh, never mind, like I gotta quit out for whatever reason, right? Oh, maybe you didn't bring the right team, or oh, like I got like something came up, I gotta go do something else. Nah, bro. Not an FGO. Like in those gacha, in the new gacha games, they'll at least like either full refund your stamina, or like maybe they'll give you back most of your stamina. Like, oh, you just lose 1 point of stamina or whatever. Nah, not an FGO. If you go into a run and you need to back up for whatever reason, nah, it still eats all that shit. That's the reason why us like hardcore farmers in FGO are absolutely obsessed with like optimizing our friend supports. We will literally kick you from our friend spots or from our friends list if you put up a servant that we don't want to see. Because if a servant that we don't want to use and we're relying exclusively on one servant shows up and we accidentally tap on them and we go into a battle with the wrong support, we just wasted a run right there, and that's a loss. That's a waste of 40 AP. Like that's how like optimized our farming runs are. Personally, most of the time I can still work with like a wrong servant or so, or it's like if it's like, oh, I brought the wrong servant, okay, I'll just back out, whatever. Like sure, I'll take the AP loss, just so that I saved some time of not having to deal with the wrong servant. But like, yeah, like I've kicked somebody, a couple people from my friends list over the years because they put up the wrong fucking servant support while I was like hardcore grinding like a lottery or something. So it's pretty intense. And yes, it shouldn't be this way.
resource is refunded back to you whenever you lose.
One thing I will actually mention though is that I'm gonna pull a Pseychie here and say before you FGO nerds bring this up, I'll mention it myself. NA players might say, well, you don't have any excuse, you have clairvoyance, right? But fuck clairvoyance. That doesn't change the fact that like Pseychie said during like the better part of the presentation segment, that it's still bullshit that you have to look up on a third-party fucking website information that should be provided to you in-game. So yeah, that doesn't really change anything.
Lose or quit out of a level. This is a quality of life change I think is much needed here, as it feels quite punishing for the player when it's something out of their control, considering that pretty much all other gacha games have this safeguard in place. The front point gacha is where you go to roll your low rarity units. Usually in the late game, this is just for getting fodder to upgrade your units for CEs. However, during certain events, there is a limited time servant that gets added to the FP pool. It is generally advised by veterans to accumulate your FP and wait for these events, as pulling them grants you a lot of servant coins, which is then used to perform something called grail casting.
More details on that. It goes a little deeper than that. Specifically, that limited time front point banner, for such as this one. Whoever is the limited time bronze servant, in this case Mary Anning for the learning with the manga collab, the Rio collab as we called it. Whenever there's a limited time bronze servant, you get the same amount of coins as if you were pulling, I believe, a regular gacha servant. So for example, like a 4-star, was it a 4-star or was it a 3-star? I forget. Just to put it in reference, if you roll multiple copies of like say other bronze servants, like a 1 or 2-star, a normal like permanent 1 or 2-star, normally you only get like what, +2 +3 coins per, something like that. But if you're a limited time bronze servant like Mary Anning is here, every copy you get of her gives you +15. And in order to use the Grail casting thingy that Pseychie mentioned, where it's a mechanic where you basically get you exchange servant coins for 2 Grails every month. Every Grail that you Grail cast costs 2,000 servant coins. That's why we recommend we usually tell people to save your friend points for these limited time bronze banners. I don't know why it's like this, but it is.
During certain events, there is a limited time servant FP and wait for these events, as pulling them grants you a lot of servant coins, which is then used to perform something called Grail casting, enabling you to exchange servant coins for Holy Grails. It's a small thing you can optimize. The only issue is that it takes ages
way
to
too
spend
fucking
all your
long,
FP.
yes.
You can only roll 10 at a time, so you have to sit there clicking away until your hundreds of thousands of FP are all used up.
So I am currently floating like how many friend points do I have? Like 70 million? Something like that. So just for reference, Pseychie has 1 million here. I have 70 million. And that's how much friend points I have right now. That does not show you how many friend points I've rolled over the course of the past 7 years. So you can just imagine like a wildly huge number, I suppose. Like what, over 1 billion maybe? Maybe that's a little bit too much. I don't know. But yes, I have a macro for my tablet because my tablet I have an iPad, like I just said, and Apple devices have this built-in feature called, I believe it's called it's like a sync. I forgot the exact name actually. It's been a while since I set it up. But basically, it has a built-in macro system where you can build your own. You can set your own macro. It's not too complicated. I think it's only limited to like a certain number of taps or like a certain amount of time. So it's not a great macro, but it still has one. And I set one up specifically to roll, for 2 reasons. 1, to roll friend points, and 2, to roll lottery boxes. The fact that I feel the need to use a macro, set up a macro, and this might sound a little bit hypocritical because I roasted people for using FGA. I'm fine with using macros for stuff like this, not for actually farming the game. So there's my difference, so there's my excuse. But the fact that I feel the need to use a fucking macro just to roll friend point gacha, yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, this is part of the reason why trying to make craft essence bombs, nobody wants to do it because it just takes so goddamn long. Like, all these problems individually are bad enough, but you gotta think about, when you consider, like, all of them all put together, it's like, oh man, dude. Like, no wonder people don't fucking make craft essence bombs,
And not to mention micromanaging your inventory, since you could quickly exceed the cap for servants and CEs.
It used to be that now with friend point gacha, you can have up to 100 items over your inventory limit. It used to be that you couldn't do that with friend points. But somewhat recent change. However, the game will not let you actually play anything until you get your inventory items, like the number of items you have in your inventory, down below the limit. So you have to get rid of your excess, which is also bullshit.
I wish there was a way to roll the FP gacha in bulk, kind of like what they did for lottery.
Exactly. The 100 roll lottery boxes was like one of the best changes that they did that they gave us for lotteries going forward. Too bad we didn't get this until like fucking year 6 or 7. Now I don't even farm lotteries this hard, this autistically anymore. Would have liked doing this. I would have loved having this back in the day, but no. Fucking FGO, man. Fucking DW and Aniplex. Fuck them. They can burn in hell for all I care. Well, except for Kana Yoshiki, he's cool.
Events, which would be an.
But yeah, if we had a 100-point roll for friend points, oh boy, that would make rolling friend points so much fucking better. But will they ever do that? Yeah, no, probably not.
Shaded feature. Quick play or an auto battle feature is also quite common in modern gacha games.
FGO has none of that.
If you already beaten a level once and the game knows that you can do it, you can skip the level and get the rewards immediately. This is not present in FGO. The best way to farm is to use the 3-turn farming methods, which is optimized for time and brain usage. Getting one of those meta supports is not a hard requirement, but not having one will majorly inconvenience you. That being said, when certain events,
even using support servants, it might not always be enough. Just for reference, this character, her name is KO. Her full name is Coin Sky of Light. We abbreviate her name just KOL or Coin of Light or whatever, however you want to call her. The reason why she's meta is because she's our resident Buster farming support. In a nutshell, she's our premier servant for allowing Buster MP servants to use their MP 3 times in a row. That's what she enables. But normally you can only do that if you have 2 copies of her in a fight, and how you do that is you have your own copy and you take a support. So you have two KOLs in the same on the same team together. One is your own and the other one is a friend's. There are multi-core teams where you don't necessarily need 2 of the same supports, so you can sometimes get away with not having to have your own meta support servant. But it's certainly very true that having them will make a world of difference.
Once hit, they are generally considered better to grind since the material drops are more worth it, such as raids and lottery events. Even with 3-turn farming, it takes a grueling amount of time to clear out your stamina reserves. Some people are obviously going to be okay with it, but after some time, one has to wonder, is this really worth it? In titles such as...
To be honest with you, even though I grinded this game, FGO that is, a whole shit ton, I know that I didn't have to do it. I just enjoyed the grind. But I'm autistic, or I think I am anyway, and so I was okay with it. Most people are not, though, and I would not recommend you farm this game as much as I did. There's no need for it anyway. You're not going to have like the sheer number of servants like I do, and it's not really required, not really mandatory for you to have to grind for all of them individually anyway. It's just that we do have some events where it's like, yeah, the more servants you have invested and leveled up and usable, the better off you'll be. But even then, I'm pretty sure players can still, do those events in full anyway because they give you time to do them. So you don't have to grind as much as we did. The fact of the matter, though, is that you still will have to put in an inordinate, is that the right word to use here? Amount of grind for a game like FGO compared to like literally any other gacha game out there, where it's like either they have comparatively a little bit of grind, but it's not that bad, or they just straight up don't have any grind at all. Right, like Nikkei, for instance. Nikkei, you can sweep, and you don't really farm for anything in Nikkei. You just have your defense outposts just accumulate resources, and you just click one button. Hey, there's all your resources. Well, you have to still farm, like, quote, farm skill books and or skill chips, I think they're called, and equipment like gear, fodder gear, and stuff like that. Sure, but those don't take anywhere near as long. Just you do them once, and you're good for the rest of the day. FGO, on the other hand, different story, to say the least.
Nikkei or Brown Dust 2, you can literally just expand all your AP at the press of a button. Here we have 60 units of your daily resources.
Sweeps,
all right,
baby!
All battle this for me, and we're done. See how easy that was? Nobody looks at a full AP meter and thinks, hell yeah, let's go farm embers again.
Yep.
It's a daily chore, so letting players skip it cuts
literally
down on
a
the
chore,
tedium,
yeah.
which again makes for a better player experience. Here, I'll even fix it for you while staying true to FGO's traditions. First, if the player quits out or fails a level, any AP or command spells they use are refunded. They are only to be used when the level is actually cleared. To my understanding, some of the Lost Belt 7 bosses did actually refund you your AP back, so I know this is possible. Second, since 3-turn farming has been
really?
part of
Even I
FGO's
didn't know that.
cultural
I just kind of
identity,
assumed,
instead of
they never
implementing
changed
a sweep or autoplay function, what they can do instead is to let you spend AP on bulk and give you the respective amount of rewards. So if a farming node costs
bulk sweeps,
40 AP
or not
to enter,
sweeps,
you can spend
bulk
120, runs. Triple the amount to clear once, then get triple the amount of...
That's what Ether Gazer did until recently with the last Celine patch, where they added the raid feature, which is basically a sweep. But even before then, before it had sweeps, you could still for a long time before then, you could still choose to do like up to like 4 or 5 runs at a time, and then they updated so you could do like up to like 10. I think they actually made it the same. They updated that at the same time as they put in the their own sweep feature. But yeah, something what Ether Gazer did back in the day.
Rewards. Now we've solved the tedium of farming while staying true to the FGO spirit. And now I'm going to
solving is kind of reaching, but sure, it's definitely an improvement at least.
utter a word so vile it will make you retract in terror. Saying this word will strike fear into even the most die-hard FGO fan. And that word is crossplay.
What the hell is that?
Crossplay or cross-platform play.
How is that supposed to be a scary word? I don't get it. And I know when Pseychie here mentions the word crossplay, it's not actually, you know, playing between different consoles, but I'm pretty sure he's just talking about what? Account transfer?
Is a standard feature of gacha games that lets you play on multiple devices.
Yeah, just account transfer.
Maybe I want to do the action-intensive activities with a keyboard and mouse, then log in on my phone before sleeping to spend my stamina. Maybe I want to enjoy the main story on a large screen so the small-ass mobile display doesn't burn my eyes, then log in on my phone to do dailies at night. Now, I understand that not all gacha games have an official PC port, and that's okay. What matters is that it lets you retain your progression across all platforms simply because, again, it's a good player experience.
Like Azure Lane and GFL1, well, apparently they're gonna give GFL1 a fucking PC client. I don't know what for, but hey, I guess it's good that they're getting one. But Azure Lane never had a PC client. I still think it should, because, you know, emulators are kind of ass to work with after a while. But yeah, at least Azure Lane has account transfer, where it's like, oh yeah, if you want to play it on PC, pull up on an emulator, and so you can, you know, stare at your secretary's fat ass titties on the side monitor. Sure, you can do that, and you can have it on your phone too, and just switch between the two seamlessly. Why doesn't FGO do that? I don't fucking know, because I guess Aniplex is fucking retarded.
Maybe it's server reset time and I do my Nikkei dailies on my phone. Then I realize that the daily interception boss requires the fluidity of a keyboard and mouse. I close the game, open up the PC client, no need for any passwords, no need for any logins, tap to play, and go from there.
The Nikkei launcher can be a little bit finicky, but yes, like 90% of the time, that's how easy it is. Sometimes the Nikkei launcher will like arbitrarily like forget your login and you have to log in again, but yeah, I'm just nitpicking here.
This has been the case with all 6 of the previous games I've reviewed and any other gacha games I've played in the past. This is exactly how it should work. Nothing more, nothing less. Instead, FGO uses the primordial technique of
Primordial,
transfer codes, where you set a password
they're not
and enter it
wrong,
to
or he's
transfer
not
your
wrong.
data to a new device. This means you cannot seamlessly play on a phone or tablet without issuing a code first. If for whatever
Wait for
reason,
the whole
app
game
is
to fucking
deleted or you
re-download
lost
all
your
over
phone,
again.
you can either try contacting their customer support, then they'll ask you a bunch of personal questions relating to your account, then you just might get your account back. But if you don't, then you literally just lose all your progress. This is a major quit moment for even long-term players. There is nothing more disheartening than finding out that the investments you made on an account were all for nothing. What's more frustrating, just like every other technical
I know a lot
issue
of
I've
horror
mentioned so
stories
far,
about those
this
stories
is
too,
a
or about that
fixable problem.
situation
And listen,
too,
I can
or that
already
incident.
smell the doubters because I already know about the Aniplex email system introduced in JP or
What are you talking about again? I
So
was talking
were
over
all
him.
for nothing. What's more frustrating, just like every other technical issue I've mentioned so far, this is a fixable problem. And listen, I can already smell the doubters because I already know about the Aniplex email system introduced in JP earlier this year. This is actually not a crossplay system. It just makes it easier to transfer your data across devices. Not to mention that you need to verify yourself as a Japanese citizen. You still
yeah,
have to delete the data
NA
on your
players,
old
who are
device and
they?
keep signing in back and forth. It's an improved account binding system, not a crossplay system. I guess if you're on insane copium, you could just keep transferring your data back and forth across devices.
And we do.
But it is still a far
It's not even
cry from a
copium, we
true
have to.
crossplay system
What else are we gonna do?
widespread in gacha games these days. FGO's story is home to some of the greatest moments in gacha gaming. Some of the boss encounters are genuinely filled with unique mechanics, distinct animations, and visually appealing backdrops. So my question is, why not give players a chance to experience it again? There is a story cutscenes replay, but you can't actually fight the
this
bosses.
is-
I'm sure a lot of players
This is a very common request among the player base. Yeah, we've been asking for this literally since the beginning. Why can't we replay old fights? They do bring back old story fights in the form of, they call them memorial quests every year. It's kind of like part of their like anniversary bullshit. But like the fact that it's not, they don't make it permanent content is garbage. It's hot dog shit. I know I keep using the word dog shit, but hey, that's my favorite insult. Dog shit, bullshit, whatever. Any variation of the word shit. Yeah, it's horrible. Like, it's so bad that like whenever you see, for those of you who like watch FGO, like servant like test run videos, because I know like people like Naya and others, like whenever a new JP servant comes out, like they like to do like servant demonstration video. I think that's what they call them, demo videos, demonstration videos. I don't know if they do this anymore, but it used to be that some content creators, some JP YouTubers used to have like dedicated accounts that would be right at Solomon or the final boss at Solomon, just so that they could do new servant solo runs against Goetia. Well, not Solomon, but Goetia. And yeah, that's all that account would be good for. Like, they would basically have two accounts. One, their main account, and the other account would just be them at Goetia. And all they would do is they would have those two accounts be friends with each other, so that way when they play on the Goetia account, or the account that's at Solomon about to fight Goetia, they just take their support summon, their support servant that they already have on their main account to kind of cheese the system almost. But yeah, like, the fact that content creators have to go to those kinds of lengths in order to just for some content is baffling. And the fact that like previous fights are basically like limited time content is also hot dog shit too.
Will want to relive the moments of facing against the Temple of Solomon, Knight Gawain from Camelot, or the monstrous Trees of Emptiness from the Lost Belt. It just strikes me a little odd that FGO is widely known for its beautiful storytelling, yet there is no way to experience any of those cool moments again.
You can only reread the story, but not the actual cool-ass fights.
Except for certain recollection quests, but if you're able to show that this feature is possible, why not just put it there permanently?
Yeah.
FGO is also home to a diverse array of
Perma
farmable
endgame
materials, all of which are needed for leveling servant skills. You can either farm them manually from a free quest node, which are usually not optimal for the drop rate, or via certain events. Some of these resources are only available in the later chapters, so if a new player gets a shiny new SSR from the Lost Belt, they actually just can't level them unless they reach that chapter. There is a currency called the Pure Prism that all players will get, but the supply is limited. In the Pure Prism shop, you can buy almost every material in the game, but again, there is a limit on how many can be bought. This is a good quality of life change, except certain skills are extremely grindy. If we take a look at
He'll probably go over to himself, but for 5-star servants, if they require a bronze material at level 8, they require 72 of them, yeah. So you are looking at having to farm, what's 72 times 3? 216 of a bronze material. Remember, RNG drop rate. And even if it does show up in like an event shop, you can only buy at most like 30 of them at a time. 30 materials for bronze rarity, 20 for silvers, and then only 10 for golds, for gold materials. With the one exception being, I believe the berserker, the chimera horns, yeah, because those are considered fairly common in quotes. I remember back when Salem first came out, most of us hardcore farmers just completely skipped Salem's story. Like, Salem is the one mainline story, if you even consider it mainline story, that I have not read to this day, because all of us went straight to bulldoze through Salem's story just so that we could start farming stakes for Atrocious, because Atrocious at the time was about to come out for Christmas. So we all wanted to get ready for her.
Melicine's skill level up materials, one level up to 9 will cost 72 bells, meaning that you have to farm, just a tiny 216 of these. When compared to the total Pure Prism stock only at 100, it's not nearly enough to max out one servant's skills.
I believe the Pure Prism shop also only stocks up to 100 of each material in the game too. So it's massively stacked. It's weighted against the bronze materials, and weighted towards weighted towards gold materials, I believe. I think that's how it works. It's been a while since I last been in Pure Prism shop, or we call them cum cubes.
Something frustrating is that FGO does not have a fusion function. In other
Yep.
gacha games,
No
you can merge
upgrading.
or combine
no
lesser
synthesizing
materials
or
to
anything.
a higher rarity
You
one
get what you
to
get.
balance out any excessive materials and turn it into something useful. That would be pretty helpful here, wouldn't it? In Path to Nowhere, when you rate a level for resources, if you happen to get enough, the game will literally ask you if you want to continue or head back to save stamina. It's a streamlined process that cuts down on the tedium, making FGO pretty behind on this regard as well. There's also some general jank with the ways how the sorting or the filtering system works. You can kind of search through all your servants to find the right one, but there's all these options that I don't even know if anyone has the time and patience to use. There is a smart sort, where selecting certain servants
fuck
or
the smart
CEs can
sort.
prioritize them at the front of the list. Except this feature is really unintuitive what it actually does, since
fuck
it has
this
to be
thing.
enabled via something called smart sort, except the toggle on the side says multi-select. Due to the sheer amount of servants and CEs added throughout the years, I think FGO could really benefit from a search function, in order to find the odd
There is the push function does let you pinpoint who your favorite servants are. Actually, does the push function? I think the push function just tells you can only put on one servant, and that just lets your other players know, your other friends on your friends list know that, oh yeah, this is your favorite servant or some shit. There should be a the fucking favorite button right here. That you can put that on multiple servants, and then that way, if you have like servants that you use a lot of, you can actually use one of the filters in the filter menu to just select, oh yeah, just pull up my favorite servants or whatever it is that they call it. But yeah, no, the sorting in this game is hot ass. I'm used to it because again, 7.5 year veteran, but for Pseychie to be fucking fed up with this, I completely understand. Fucking dog shit UI.
unit that you want, instead of sifting through all these menus. I'm glad that they did at least do some improvements here, so if you knew what to look for, it could get the job done. Let's say I'm in the burn menu, and I wish to burn all of my 1 and 2 star servants that I pulled on the FP gacha. By default, the sorting is unintuitive, and you would have to manually select the servants. It does get the results I wanted, but this can be confusing if you have a lot of servants to burn all at once, not to mention that the game does not auto-select them for you, and it's possible that you could make a mistake if you're not careful. Let's take a look at...
I'm glad he mentioned mistakes. For those of you who are if you are not familiar with old school gacha games, one defining trait of old school gacha games is that every character, you can get multiple copies of a character, like multiple physical individual copies of a character, and like as in you can play them individually. That's a concept that Genshin basically did away with when it became popular, because you can only roll for a character, and then once you get that character, extra copies you do roll of them just gives you like a token for them, right? A constellation thingy or whatever the fuck. So newer gacha players will not be familiar with this concept, or be like why would you even do this? Or like, what does this even mean? Or what are the risks associated with this? And the thing that Pseychie brought up here that I want to mention is that you can delete your fucking characters. That's right, even your 5 stars. And it does not matter if you accidentally unlock a servant, and you didn't notice, and you accidentally selected them, the game doesn't care if you like, you know, if they're like a level 1 5-star or a level 120. If you accidentally unlock a servant and you delete them, and you didn't like look through the servants you're about to burn, because the game does at least give you like a warning window, like, hey, you're about to delete a 5-star. You sure you want to do this? But if you didn't pay attention to that and you kept pressing OK because you're in a hurry or some shit, well, there goes your 5-star. There go all your grails. There go all your fucking resources you put into making a 120 servant. So, that can happen. It has happened. I've seen it happen. Great game.
for you, and it's possible that you could make a mistake if you're not careful. Let's take a look at Brown Dust 2. Say I wanted to dismantle all of my R rarity gear that's tiers 1 and 2. Quite a long menu to sift through, but if you tap on the filters, you tap on R rarity, tiers 1 and 2. And the game will auto-select every applicable one, which you can just dismantle right then and there. Not only is this way easier, I know the game is not going to make a mistake. Now, you might be wondering, well, if the game's got all these problems, why did you stick around? So at the time, I didn't really give it too much thought. I was still commuting in college, and was just happily tapping away at the story on the metro. I think for a lot of longtime players, it's something that you just get used to. That is, until I started to dabble in other gacha games and realized, wait a minute, why isn't this feature in the game? It's there everywhere else, so why don't they have it? That's just the thing. The game makes millions of dollars, sometimes even on the level of Genshin Impact. So if you have this much budget to work with, where are all the improvements to meet the standards of modern gacha games? It just seems so bizarre to me that this cash cow of a game doesn't get key quality of life changes to this day. Since the optimization and technicalities are pretty far behind, presentation gets a below expectations rating.
As it should, and I think I'll end the video here after, because I've already been this video is also almost 4 hours long. But after one last thought here, again, Pseychie feels the need to pull up this bullshit, and you'll get to hear me fucking rant about this shit again. I don't like the fact that he keeps bringing up the fucking revenue charts. Yes, it's undeniable that FGO can and does make a whole buttload of money. Anytime they release like a really popular banner, sure. But like comparing FGO to like Genshin is like, I don't know, man. I don't know if someone like you, Pseychie, should be doing something like that. Because again, you're not a god of gacha. I know that. I understand you make a lot of videos. You've put out a lot of like gacha review videos, and they've gotten a lot of views. To be sure, it's so far I actually like the quality of this video so far. The editing seems on point. You know, the speaking style. It's a lot easier to listen to you than like somebody like Mr. Pokey, for example. Yeah, I just don't like the fact that you're you're not constantly bringing it up, but you brought it up a couple times so far already. You brought it up a few times in the beginning, now you're bringing it up again. I personally don't like cash cow arguments when in like this sort of like review, in like a review context. Comparing games is fine, right? Especially when it comes to gameplay. Like, I don't have a problem with. I think it's good actually that Mr. Pseychie was able to like showed like clips of all the other gacha games he plays and like being like, oh, like these games do these things, so why doesn't FGO do them? Those I understand because those are actually gameplay related. But this one feels a little bit tacky. I was gonna say that Pseychie is clearly being influenced by other gacha content creators who also have been buying into the trend of looking at fucking revenue charts and being like, oh, and they try to fucking make some content out of that. Like, oh, why is this game making so much money? And you know, they have no idea what the fuck they're looking at. Pseychie clearly isn't that brain dead, but still, I don't think this is the best thing that you could bring up. In my opinion, there's no need to bring up how much money a fucking gacha makes, other than maybe just to illustrate like how big a gacha could be, or like maybe to demonstrate how big a gacha game is, right? Oh, it made this much money during this time frame. Okay, then clearly, like, yeah, there must be a lot of people out there who play this game. Well, I say that, but I see fucking Puzzle and Dragons over here, and PND is basically, what, JP only? Who the fuck outside of Japan plays fucking Puzzles and Dragons? Maybe some people do, actually, but still. You ask new age gacha gamers what the fuck Puzzle and Dragons is, they're like, they're not gonna know what the fuck it is. They're just gonna think it's like some sort of weird Japanese variant of like D&D or something. But anyways. Yeah, that's the only thing that I really don't like about this video so far. There's no need to pull up this fucking revenue chart, because revenue charts are one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, like anybody can pull up a revenue chart and easily manipulate it to like kind of prove their point, if you know what I'm talking about. Like they can manipulate it to further their agenda, whatever it is, whatever their agenda is. In Pseychie's case, he's trying to push it so that, you know, oh, he's trying to compare it to Genshin Impact. It's FGO makes as much money as Genshin Impact. Why don't they have, you know, quality of life buffs, like quality of life shit, like every other gacha does? Like, yes, FGO should definitely improve. There's a lot of things about it that are dog shit that I don't like, and they should change for the better. But using revenue charts as like you know, a catalyst for that, nah, that's That's not a good way to put it. Or that I don't like the vibes of this. All you needed to say was like, you don't even need to bring up how much money they make. Just, like these gacha games all do things that are much more player and consumer friendly. Why doesn't FGO do this? There's no need to pull up how much fucking money FGO makes. And besides, this revenue chart is I would say it's super fucking misleading too, because most of the time FGO isn't anywhere near like the top 5 anyway. At least not most of the time. These days you only really see it up at the top during, like, I don't know, summer events and anniversary and like maybe New Year's. And outside of that, like, good luck seeing FGO back up there outside of like a really hyped collab banner or something, like the what was it, the Mahou Tsukai no Yoru collab from last year, the Witch on Holy Night collab. So yeah, unfortunately, I really don't like whenever Gacha CCs pull up revenue charts like this. It kind of gets under my skin, to be honest. So, like, the guy who calls himself the god of Gacha doesn't want to look at revenue charts and use that as like a basic comparison between, different Gacha games. So why the fuck would I want anyone else to either, right? Anyways, this video is getting pretty long. It's already like almost 4 hours now. So yeah, I will cut the video here, and I will be back tomorrow with the last third. So in case you guys haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you guys liked what you heard here. And yeah, subscribe to the channel, follow the Twitch channel, what are my other socials, follow me on Twitter, and yeah, all that good stuff. So yeah, see you guys tomorrow. Peace.